The topic is Stop the Hate. As we speak today, there is so much hate in our country. There is so much hate in the way we do things and the way we hate on one another. I'm alarmed that we have a country where there's so much hate towards certain groups. And there is no society, I beg your pardon on, that, like I say, you can build with hate. Hate will ruin everything. Hate will pull everything down. Hate will destroy the fabric of any society. Hate will balkanize society. And the truth is, we cannot have a persistent society on hate. Sorry, I'm sweating. I'm just off the tennis court. We cannot have a persistent society on hate. We cannot have a society that feeds off hatred. Hatred towards one another. It will take Nigeria, beg your pardon, and it will destroy Nigeria if care is not taken. Because if we do not shun hate, hate will shun us. If we do not shun hate, hate will destroy our fabric. Hate will destroy our capacity. Hate will destroy us. Please, wherever you are, do not support hatred. Because if you support hatred, it is only going to make life difficult for all of us. If you support hatred, it is only going to make life miserable for all of us. Recently, after the release of the book, we have been seeing how people have been peddling hate and talking about Igbo coup, despite the fact that in the IBB book it was said that these coup plotters had their own ideology. It was not about race. But over the years, we've peddled these hates against a certain group of people. It is not right. God does not want hate. He's a God that abhors hatred. He's a God that does not like bloodshed. We must be able to stop any level of hatred towards any group. Towards Hausa, towards Igbo, towards Yoruba, towards Efik, towards IBB, towards Jaw, any group in Nigeria. We must collectively look for ways in which we can build our nation. There is no coup of any ethnic group. We should stop the hates. And I'm saying this because I know how hate destroys a nation. We saw it play out because people could not speak truth to power. We saw it play out because people could not call a spade a spade. We saw it play out because it's always about their own selfish benefit all the time. My brother, my sister, life isn't like that. If you spread hate, it will come back to you. If you do it because of your own selfish benefits, it will come back to you. If you birth hate, it will come back to you. Enough of this hate against Igbos, and other ethnic groups in your country. A message for you today is to rather think of how we can collectively build and develop our country so that it can be the sanitary of all lives. Africa has over 30 million square kilometers of land, about 1.3 billion people, or over 1 billion people, but only has 3 trillion GDP. The GDP of the entire continent of Africa is like the market capitalization of one company in America. How can we make Africa grow? Hate has destroyed Africa so much. Remember how they spread hate between the Hutus and the Tutsis. See how that developed into something that destroyed the growth potential of the country of Rwanda. Till today, that hate playing out in what is happening in Goma. See how hate destroyed groups. The Oromo, the Tigris in Ethiopia. That hate has led to wars, has led to the loss of life. See how hate split Sudan apart. Different factions fighting for the leadership of a country with so rich potential. See how hate destroyed other parts of Africa. The time we use in spreading hate, we can't be using it to develop Africa. My new charge for our leaders is rather than spread hate, why don't you increase the pie of the economy? Probably before the next 20 or to 40 years, if Nigeria can grow into a 2 or 3 trillion GDP economy, it's looking good. At least in the next 30 to 40 years, Nigeria will be one of the first 10 largest populations in the world. So at least if we can have a GDP of 3 to 4 trillion, that's what will mark a turning point for our economy. So there is no way Nigeria can grow when we are busy spreading hate, like some people spread in the last elections towards a certain group of people, which we all know what they did. And when we tell them the truth of the hate they spread against the Igbos in the last election, they will say we are spreading hate. See, do not mind them. The truth is always bitter. When you tell them the truth, it will pepper them in the body, and they will accuse you of what they do. When you don't do it, it's only the truth we told them. So we know them. We are not here to make them happy. We are here to tell them the truth. We are not here to make them happy. We are here to tell them the truth. Do not spread hate against the Igbos and against any other group. No word of hate should be in your mouth. It should be love and developmental growth. We can do better for our economy. As we speak, our economy is in doldrums. Our economy is in doldrums. If we grow the economy to over 2 trillion, to 4 trillion in the next 30 to 40 years, there will be way more jobs for people. There will be way more opportunities for people. There will be way more leverage for people. There will be way more hope for people. Because at that time, if our population is rising to about 300-400 million with a 4 trillion economy, at least you can have a decent country. We are not saying we are there yet. We can start to push to be a superpower. That should be the next collective target, rather than spreading hate. If we focus on doubling our GDP at the rate at which we were growing in 2014, and we continue to grow 6% that time, by now Nigeria GDP should be close to $1 trillion. So we must speak truth to power. We must speak truth to power. And concerning the book, we must also not forget the people that died needlessly. We must not forget the people that were crushed and left behind in the scourge of June 12th. For all those people's lives, Babangida said he's taking responsibility. But we must never forget them. We must strive to make our nation better. And we must never have a scenario again where elections are scuttled for some people's benefits. Because I've constantly asked the question, June 12 annulment was just because of Abiola. If another person had won that election, would they not have handed over power? We must do what is right. We must do what is right at all times. And many years after, people cannot come and tell us that they are sorry. But when that thing was happening, they should have done better. Anyway, Babangida has also said that if he could do it all over again, he would do it differently. So we must stop leaders from doing what is not fair. And the truth is, there are many other leaders that have things to still say about the civil war. People like Yakubu Gowon, they too must be able to write their own memoirs. Let's do what is right. I'll keep speaking against hate of the Igbos, of Yorubas, of any other ethnic group. Hausas, IBB, every other ethnic group. When we say the truth, the enemies of the truth will fight back. But we'll confront them with the truth. Because it's the truth that will make us free. We must come together and stand united. How do we build our nation? We can only build this nation with unity. We can't build it with division. We can't build it with strife. We can't build it with pain. We can't build it with blacklisting some ethnic groups. We can't build it with rhetorics like some people do not have chance to be president. Everybody has chance to be president. Every ethnic group in this country have people that are competent enough to be president. So everybody must have a chance to be president. We must start by holding politicians accountable, like I'm holding the Senate accountable. Do you know that in these newly passed budgets, there's a line item of some contracts that will still go to some of the senators? That money is another 170 billion plus the 344 billion. So the National Assembly will get over 500 billion. And also, hope you know that they also added statutory transfers for two development commissions, South Development Commission and another development commission in the north, that were just signed into law on the 4th of February. So the question is, we can't keep wasting our resource. We will hold politicians accountable. We'll do our best for our country. Because that's the gospel. You can call me up 0818 099 1991. 0818 099 1991. 0818 099 1991. 0818 099 1991. We are talking today about unity. I'll take a couple of calls and I'll also play that message for you again. The conversation I had with Daily Farotimi. Hello, how are you? Turn up the volume of your radio set, please. Please, before you call me up, turn up the volume of your radio set before you call. Hello? Yes. Morning, what's your name? Where are you calling from? Speak up, please. Speak up. I can't hear you well, oh. It's not loud enough. That's why we're talking about unity. We must all come together. We must all come together. Hello, how are you? Hello? Morning. Please turn up the volume of your radio set. I can hear myself there. I'm not supposed to be hearing myself. Please, before you call, turn up the volume of your radio set. We will speak truth to power at all times. We will not succumb to evildoers. We must unite as a nation, and God will help us. Hello? Hello? We must unite as a nation. And it's that unity that can make all of us. Hello?
Good morning, Mr. Rufai.
Morning, what's your name?
This is Daniel. I'm coming from Amor, Lagos.
Talk to me, Daniel.
Need justice. Coming to say I am sorry. Concern is not enough. The Nigerian people need justice. The corruption we are seeing today is rooted and traceable to the regime of Babangida. There's a need for Nigeria to be given justice. Babangida should face justice.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, how are you?
Hello, good morning.
Morning, what's your name?
My name is Maxwell.
Yes, Macho.
How are you doing?
Very well.
I saw about I'll be fine.
It's good, it's on leave.
Okay. You don't say about I so much believe in you and even in the because I so much believe in you guys better stay into Nigeria. But also what I can say will it bring back
I don't know. The phone line is cracky, but you said with what IBB said, will it bring back those that are killed? Obviously not. He told his own side of the story. It's for you to take it. It will not bring back those that were killed. It will not bring back those that were hurt. We must have a society where leaders are not allowed to act like that in the first place again. That's just it. When leaders are accountable to the people. There's a whole back noise, please. There's a whole back noise. 0818 099 1991. The beginning of our problem is INEC. Yes, INEC too also should be checked. Because only God will be able to know what happened in our last elections in this country. Hello? Hello? Yeah, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Jennings from Ikegu.
Good to have you. Go ahead.
Sorry, you see this problem in Nigeria. Our leaders, both president of us, they don't know how to go about thinking about this country. It's just like this Babangida. It's supposed to be someone by any head of state and the question they have to do, they have to do their own time. Now, when the president of Kenya came here, hello?
I'm with you.
Yeah. When the president of Kenya came here, his word was to Nigerian president that they should make sure that there is a unity in this country.
Mm.
But the president refused to adhere to the advice of that man. What he should have done at the president, which I expected him to ask, how can we be together in Nigeria? If there are people participating for one thing or the other, you should summon them. What is the problem in the East now concerning Nnamdi Kanu? That is what the man is supposed to face, ask about, and make sure that there is unity between Igbos and the whole situation. But the man took it aside and refused to release Nnamdi Kanu, which have made people to have a rethink and how to follow Nigeria will become one. So please, I'm advising this president should do something concerning Nnamdi Kanu's case.
Okay.
He has the right to release Nnamdi Kanu. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello.
Mr. Rufai.
Yes, how are you?
Hello.
Yes, how are you?
Fine. I'm now Mr. Rufai.
Yeah, you're talking to me. Hello, how are you?
Good morning, my brother.
Yeah.
I love the way you speak this morning. It makes sense to have in mind that Igbos are regarded in this country, even though there are people who are trying to marginalize the Igbos. But I believe God, because God is raising people like you to speak the truth, because the Bible says, "Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall set us free." I will pray that God Almighty will continue to strengthen you, give you more wisdom, and the position to handle this situation in the time of future. May God bless you.
Amen. Hello. 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 Like I've always said, for the case of Nnamdi Kanu, there's a need for a political solution. Because, see, people can talk about insecurity in the East, talk about criminality. At least if Nnamdi Kanu is released, then you now know those that are perpetrating crime and criminality. I also feel it should be released. It should be released, called on the table. Let us all talk for unity of this country. The constant incarceration of Nnamdi Kanu is not the way to go. We need to be able to speak for unity and come together in this country. Hello.
Hello. Mr. The same.
Morning, what's your name?
Grandma Maggie from
Okay, go ahead, Grandma Maggie.
I'm going to say for this program this morning. Least expected. Concerning this, what is going on in this country? Our leaders are not. But what major role are our media really playing in all this? Because it seems in those days, I remember in the 70s, I remember in the early 80s, media.
Oh, I think the phone line went off. So I'm so sorry about that. The phone line went off. We'll try to reboot the phone line and get calls in as much as possible. But hey, please do well. Don't give up on us. Do well to still, you know, join us if you can. So sorry about that. I think we just have to recharge the phone. Last week Sunday, we had a session with Dele Farotimi, and we're going to be playing that session again. It's an over 3 hour session where he talked about many things, talked about his issue, his incarceration, and all of that. Talked about many things. It's a 3 hour session. We'll play that session again. But please, as we go this Sunday, unity will keep us together. One way or the other, we might all have hurt ourselves. We might all have said things not palatable to one another. On behalf of the unity of Nigeria, I beg, let's all forgive, so that unity can keep us strong. so that one love will keep us together. There's so much we need to do for development. We cannot do all those things for development if we are not united. Let's not allow the political class destroy us because they are all one at the top. When they are sharing money, they don't discuss the vision. A Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo man, they all share the money at the top. But it is us, the poor suffering Nigerians, that when it's election time, they remind us of disunity and discord, and we start to fight each other. Please do not allow any politician to use you to fight your brother because we are all suffering together. They are the ones enjoying. Today, both Igbo, both Hausa, both Yoruba senators, all of them are all going to get over 500 billion. Less than 500 people are going to get over 500 billion. Some of them will take billions home in constituency projects, which they never do. They are all united. But it's when it's that election time, they will come and tell you that that Yoruba man close to you is your enemy, that Igbo man close to you is your enemy. Nobody is your enemy. No Hausa man is your enemy. No Igbo man is your enemy. No Yoruba man is your enemy. The only enemy is the thieving political class that take the resource that's supposed to belong to us, the people, and they use it for their own selfish benefits. So we need to try as much as possible to solve our problems and focus on developments. There's so much to be done as regards developments. The new target I want to give us, let's see, maybe in the next 20, 30 years, how we can even make Nigeria a $2 to $4 trillion economy. A $2 to $4 trillion economy while our population starts to grow. Because very soon, in the next 20, 30 years, our population will be growing so much. By 2050, we are projected to hit close to 400 million. By then, we should be about a 4 trillion economy thereabouts. Yes, let's think development. Let's think of the future. Let's not think of division. Division that is only peddled by politicians that steal from us. I pray as you go today, God will bless you. He will make his face shine over you. He will give you peace on every side. It will impact your life and give you that thing of joy that you've been praying for. I just want to pray for people that are sick this morning. I don't know whatever the medical reports, but I know of a Dr. Jesus. I pray we heal you today. I pray we make your life better. I want to pray for people struggling in marriages, that whatever it is, God will help you. I want to pray for people struggling, seeking God's face for the fruit of the womb. And whatever it is, God will meet you at the point of your needs. He's the only one that can help you. He's got the whole world in his hands, and he will never leave nor forsake you. His help will be on you, his strength will be on you, his capacity will be on you, and God will bless you. He will make his favor and his face shine over you, over your life, over everything that concerns you. In Jesus' name, amen. Please want our production team to play that interview we had with Daily Farrell. That's a very good interview. Bless you so much, and you'll be able to get all of these sessions on YouTube and on Instagram as much as possible. Bless you so much. God bless you.
empty hunger.
To the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lodge.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and cultural documentaries, Voice of the People 90.3 FM became a symbol for 21st century media. And now, a new baby is born. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV, youthful, full of vigor and penchant for excellence in the continent's media space, exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights, dissecting the news without fear or favor, through factual and accurate stories and contents.
Corruption kills three things and makes a society.
Representing the interests of the people and giving them a voice. Voice of the People TV is here to stay towards building a fair society. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television, truly a voice for the people. From the views on the street,
We go to bed empty hunger.
to the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lodge.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and cultural documentaries, Voice of the People 90.3 FM became a symbol for 21st century media. And now, a new baby is born. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV, youthful, full of vigor and penchant for excellence in the continent's media space, exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights, dissecting the news without fear or favor, through factual and accurate stories and contents.
Corruption kills three things and makes a society.
Representing the interests of the people and giving them a voice. Voice of the People TV is here to stay towards building a fair society. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television, truly a voice for the people. From the views on the street,
We go to bed empty hunger.
to the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lodge.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and cultural documentaries, Voice of the People 90.3 FM became a symbol for 21st century media. And now, a new baby is born. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV, youthful, full of vigor and penchant for excellence in the continent's media space, exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights, dissecting the news without fear or favor, through factual and accurate stories and contents.
Corruption kills three things and makes a society.
Representing the interests of the people and giving them a voice. Voice of the People TV is here to stay towards building a fair society. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television, truly a voice for the people. From the views on the street,
We go to bed empty hunger.
to the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lodge.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and cultural documentaries, Voice of the People 90.3 FM became a symbol for 21st century media. And now, a new baby is born. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV, youthful, full of vigor and penchant for excellence in the continent's media space, exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights, dissecting the news without fear or favor, through factual and accurate stories and contents.
Corruption kills three things and makes a society.
Representing the interests of the people and giving them a voice. Voice of the People TV is here to stay towards building a fair society. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television, truly a voice for the people. From the views on the street
We go to bed empty hunger.
to the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lodge.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and cultural documentaries, Voice of the People 90.3 FM became a symbol for 21st century media. And now, a new baby is born. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV, youthful, full of vigor and penchant for excellence in the continent's media space, exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights, dissecting the news without fear or favor, through factual and accurate stories and contents.
Corruption kills three things and makes a society.
Representing the interests of the people and giving them a voice. Voice of the People TV is here to stay towards building a fair society. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television, truly a voice for the people. From the views on the street
We go to bed empty hunger.
to the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lodge.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and cultural documentaries, Voice of the People 90.3 FM became a symbol for 21st century media. And now, a new baby is born. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV, youthful, full of vigor and penchant for excellence in the continent's media space, exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights, dissecting the news without fear or favor, through factual and accurate stories and contents.
Corruption kills three things and makes a society.
Representing the interests of the people and giving them a voice. Voice of the People TV is here to stay towards building a fair society. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television, truly a voice for the people. From the views on the street
We go to bed empty hunger.
to the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lodge.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and cultural documentaries, Voice of the People 90.3 FM became a symbol for 21st century media. And now, a new baby is born. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV, youthful, full of vigor and penchant for excellence in the continent's media space, exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights, dissecting the news without fear or favor, through factual and accurate stories and contents.
Corruption kills three things and makes a society.
Representing the interests of the people and giving them a voice. Voice of the People TV is here to stay towards building a fair society. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television, truly a voice for the people. From the views on the street
We go to bed empty hunger.
to the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lord.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and cultural documentaries, Voice of the People 90.3 FM became a symbol for 21st century media. And now, a new baby is born. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV, youthful, full of vigor and penchant for excellence in the continent's media space, exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights.
To various places, and we are very grateful to our partners, activists in many countries have joined us live, and we are very grateful to them. We are very grateful to all our technical partners in Nigeria, in San Francisco, in Europe. We cannot thank you enough. We are streaming YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. It is only those who are on Zoom who can ask questions. Let me introduce our guests. None of them requires an introduction, by the way. The principal person is Rufai Oseni, a young man, but who is retired, a retired legal practitioner, and the author of 3 thought-provoking and insightful books. Do Not Die in Their War, Imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution, and Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System. Is Nigeria and its criminal justice system that creates both an implosion and explosion in the Nigerian society. In 2002, we established Rufai Oseni & Co., DF Legal, a full-service law firm, and he remained in that service until 2018. He's not a politician, and sometimes he doesn't like to be called an activist, but he's been playing an active role in Nigerian politics. And in 2023, he served as the official spokesperson for the Labour Party. So, although he may not like that label, he advocates for good governance, equity, and justice. I've seen him several times on various platforms advocating for changes in Nigeria. Welcome, Rufai Oseni. You're welcome to this program. Farouk is an household name in Nigeria, a columnist, back page with the Tribune. Before that, is work with other newspaper outlets. It was my privilege to write an entire book on him. And when I was writing the book, people said, "Where are you going to get all these sources?" I said, "Don't worry." So I went to the computer village and gave 2 people money and said, "Everything he has written, please." I went to collect flash drive, and that's how I got all the materials to write the book. And those of you who think that Nigeria is impossible, Rufai Oseni wrote his 3 books in Lagos, and I wrote the entire book on Farouk in Ikeja, not even in the US. And it's a long book. His day job is a professor of communication. His night job is to write about Nigeria, which has given him tremendous name and popularity. Some people think he will be picked up, and under Buhari, he was trying to avoid to go to Nigeria. Well, he was in Nigeria, I think a year ago, and he was not picked up. So expect him more often. He's a reporter, news editor, and is one of Nigeria's most prominent figure. Rufai Oseni is extremely popular. You see him every evening. I see him every evening when I watch the television. He's a TV presenter, radio personality, public speaker. He works with Arise, where he's famous, and to some people, also cantankerous, because they disagree sometimes with his approach. His dynamic presence and style have made him a prominent figure in Nigerian media. He has become an iconic figure, and I'm sure they have to be studying him in media school, in schools of journalism and communication all over the country. Because we are streamlining this to various media platforms, our options are severely limited. The way we want to proceed today is Mr. Oseni will start the conversation, and we are going to cover issues around Nigerian politics, issues around the judiciary, issues around governance, the power of social media. Members of the audience, I know you're always eager to talk. You want to talk. We will allocate your time to you after all our panelists have spoken. The technical people will soon remove me so that we can focus only on 3 panelists. But before they dismiss me, can I ask the first question, Dele Farotimi? Who is Dele Farotimi? Who is Dele Farotimi?
I like thinking I'm simply a human being, a creation of God, born in this space today known as Nigeria, born to Yoruba parents. That defines my origin, but above all things, I would just like to think that Dele Farotimi is simply a human being who tries his best to be as truthful and as just as he can be. That's all I am, just another human being, a creature in time, here for a season. Just hopefully I'll do my best before I take my bow. That's all I am, just another human being.
Mr. Oseni, to you now. Mr. Oseni, you're having technical challenges. Farouk, you can ask him a question while we're waiting for him.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the very kind introduction. So I'm going to go straight ahead. We're going to start, we agree that we go to judiciary, politics, and then society. So I want to start my first question with your book, your very popular, depending on wherever you stand, notorious book on the Nigerian judiciary. You leveled very serious allegations against prominent figures within the Nigerian judiciary, including iconic figures such as Afe Babalola, accusing them of systemic corruption and manipulation of justice. These assertions led to your arrest and detention and subsequent legal proceedings, which have now been discontinued following interventions from notable traditional rulers in southwest Nigeria. While I understand that you may be constrained from discussing specific details due to potential agreements or ongoing sensitivities, I want to ask two quick questions. One, from a legal standpoint, how challenging is it to substantiate claims of judicial corruption in Nigerian courts, considering the systemic issues you have highlighted? And two, reflecting on your experiences, do you believe your approach in presenting these allegations was the most effective means to instigate reform? If given the opportunity to revisit the book, would you consider altering your methodology or the manner in which these accusations were articulated?
You gentlemen are on the other side of the Atlantic, so I guess it must be good morning at your end, but it is evening where I am in sunny
morning, yes,
Lagos. So good morning to you gentlemen. Rufai, good evening, Jari. I know me and you are suffering Lagos eat together. So let me clear up a couple of issues. What have been withdrawn are the charges preferred by the police, even though they were preferred at the instance of a petitioner who has now withdrawn his petition. I have no agreement with anybody as to what I may or may not speak to. I was not privy to the visit by the royalties to Ado-Ekiti. I read of it in the news like every other person. So if I was not consulted before persons went on a mission to Ado-Ekiti, I can hardly be party to an agreement that did not have any privity with me. I had no knowledge whatsoever, so my inability to speak to certain aspects of the issue is born out of the fact that, in spite of the fact that the petitioner has withdrawn his petition and there is a discontinuation of the criminal proceedings, I still have 4 suits that I am aware of in 4 different states of the Federation, filed by members of the same law office against my person. So because of the pendency of those suits, I am still constrained about speaking to certain aspects of the book. But there are questions you have asked that I'm able to either answer or clarify. The first of them is the fact that we have come to label the book notorious. Persons would prefer to label the book notorious, but as I have labored to make clear on numerous occasions, I did not sit down in a beer parlor. I was not in an officer's mess. I was not gossiping. It wasn't idle, cheap talk. I wrote a book. 90% of the persons criticizing me for whatever they believe my tactics to have been in writing the book have not read the book. The facts of my allegations are right there in the book. If Nigerians would stop being so Philistinic and illiterate, certificated morons, pardon my French, if they would dare to read, there will be no argument as to the proof of what I have written. Do you understand? I said from day one, is right there inside the book. I said every word in the book that I had written. I said if anybody was unhappy with what I had written, they should feel free to take me to court. That I am happy to go through the same legal system that I have labeled as institutionally corrupt. This is not a trial of Dele Farotimi. Let nobody make that error. It is a trial of the legal system that we have built as a collective. Chief Afe Babalola is more than old enough to be my father. And I did not set out to destroy the man or to tarnish his image. Nothing personal. I was writing about the institution of the judiciary. Multiple names were mentioned, offices were mentioned. I did not set out to libel anybody. I simply told the truth of what I saw. So that whether my tactics in writing a book, all I did was write a book. If I have been wrong, let me be confronted with the lies that I have told. It's that simple. So there are 4 cases that I know of that I am exceedingly happy the matter in the civil court, but let me leave the remaining for now. So in as far as it relates to dealing with how difficult it is to deal with the substance of my allegations, as I said, they're right there in the book. Sometimes law becomes mathematical and then became 200 and was it 14 or 216? Numbers constantly changing. That is not law, and that is not science, and that is not maths. Maths is maths. Law can be scientific and it can be mathematical. I laid out a very clear case. It's in the public domain. Those who would dare to read, let them go and read. Those who wish to challenge me with any lies that I might have told, let them go ahead. So please, I believe I've dealt with the two.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Mr. Oseni, Mr. Oseni, are you ready to ask a question on the judiciary? You're having technical issues.
He needs to be unmuted.
Can you unmute yourself?
He's not even talking, so that's not suggestive of him even being aware that I'm not sure if he's hearing you or maybe somebody.
Yeah, I think he's unmuted now.
Please, let me ask a follow-up question. In Nigerian history, how many books have created this kind of legal issues that you are aware of? In case of precedent.
I don't actually believe that my book has created any legal issues. I believe that what my book has done is to unveil the impunity that governs Nigeria and that governs our legal system.
So
I don't want to be cutting into Rufai.
That's all right. Farouk, can you continue?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, if you said I don't recall any book written on Nigerian judiciary that has generated as much controversy as yours. And in my intervention on this issue, I said it was at the unintended, your arrest and detention for what is essentially a civil matter created a publicity around the book that gave it even more mileage than it probably would have had. But I want to go beyond that and to say, what would you say are the root causes of these systemic issues within the legal system? I myself have had the misfortune of being singled out by the Supreme Court for an intervention I did some time ago, where in moments of anger, I called the Supreme Court judges a rotting gargle of purchasable judicial bandits. So I was singled out for a very vicious personal attack by the Supreme Court. I'm not sure that there's any record of that ever happening, but I'm not a lawyer, but I'm familiar with the fact that there are systemic issues within the system. Being someone who is deeply inserted into this, you've written a book on it that has caused this controversy. What would you say are the root causes of these systemic issues within the legal system?
You see, when you ask the question as you just did, you have been deliberately, shall I say, you're deliberately ignoring the real elephant in the room. The question is suggestive of an inquisition regarding the product of a tree instead of focusing on the tree. There is no aspect of the Nigerian state or its governance systems that is untainted by the evil that has overtaken Nigeria. Nigeria is essentially a country governed by impunity. Impunity demands that the rule of law must be suspended so that men begin becomes the real basis for the governance of the state. When that is the case, it becomes governance, and in that case, you cannot have a judicial system that is respectful of human rights or that allows the equality of persons that are brought before it. Nigeria has evolved a modern feudal state. Feudalism is accepting of the non-equality of persons. It demands that there must be a stratification of society along social classes. And those who are up there must be above the law. That is what has happened to us as a collective. Feudalism that was once a Fulani construct has escaped its host. The entire country has become feudalized. That is why you cannot find any aspect of the Nigerian state that the Igbo man is shouting marginalization, but there hasn't been a Fulani ruler in Igbo land in 25, 26 years. They've been ruled by their own. Victimized during the years of Buhari. The point I'm making is that what you have right now that we are talking about, the judicial system, is not by accident, is a function of design. It must allow some people to exist above the law, and it must administer the impunity required to govern Nigeria, since it is not subjectable to law. That is where we are. So to deal with the judicial rascality and the multiple malfeasance that you have seen in the judiciary for which you were censured, I assure you that before you can deal with that, you have to deal with the larger Nigerian problem: the loss of citizenship, the lack of the rule of law, and the complete absence of democracy and people's sovereignty. You have to deal with all of those before you can deal with the judiciary. It's a chicken and egg situation. Okay, well,
Did I hear you say that the rule of law must be suspended? Or
did No. Okay. I said in the absence of the rule of law,
okay,
you cannot have a judiciary that functions in the manner that you and I desire. Our judiciary is institutionally structured to administer impunity. It must allow some people to be above the law, while some people are kept underfoot. That is the way our country is structured. If you focus on the judiciary, you'll be missing the point. The judiciary is merely a fruit. You have to look to the evil tree producing the fruit if you want to change the fruit that you are complaining about. Our judiciary is designed to be the way it is on purpose.
So in that case, what is the role, say, of human rights activists?
You see, the very term,
who listens to them? Yeah.
The very term human rights activists is suggestive of fraud, as far as I'm concerned. That's why I don't accept it. Why are you being active? Why are you? What is it that you are doing in that space? Why don't we deal with the underlying reason when we are talking about? You can be talking animal rights. Animals can't talk. You can be talking about child's rights. They are in need of protection. But when we are in a country governed by laws and we're talking about human rights, we're not even talking indigenous people's rights. We're not talking about minorities' rights. We're not talking gay rights. We're not talking progressive rights that progressive societies give to their people. We're talking about human rights. That is the most basic. Nobody can give me my human rights. I take it. And when I take it and the system demands that it must be taken from me, the system must justify why my human rights, those are inalienable rights, that some people are occupying a space called the human rights activism space, is suggestive of a fraud that some people must be fed in the name of, please, why are we even talking human rights in a country that is supposedly a democracy 26 years after it supposedly became a democracy? It is a mockery. So I'm sorry. I know a lot of people believe they are doing a whole lot of good in what they call the human rights space, but I don't believe in that sobriquet. I think it is fraudulent. Let's focus on why we are the way we are. The loss of our citizenship. You can be addressing citizenship rights. I can understand that. We can be dealing with, in fact, it is the loss of citizenship that has victimized the Nigerian. But to be talking about human rights is actually self-denigrating. Well, from who am I demanding human rights?
Well, can I intervene here a little bit? It's interesting.
Please proceed.
Okay. It's interesting that here in the United States, I can't avoid making comparisons with where I live. There are human rights activists, but human rights now have moved from what they used to be to new grounds now. We know for a fact that the late America's oldest surviving, the oldest president, past living president, Jimmy Carter, mainstreamed human rights, made it a global issue. And now human rights entail fighting for the rights of sexual minorities, gays, for instance. And but that is an issue that invites a lot of emotions in Nigeria, that causes careers to be lost because of our cultural conservatism. But in the United States, when people talk of human rights now, they talk about the rights of sexual minorities to articulate their points of view, to be seen. Where do you stand in that? I know that is happening in Nigeria now, but it's not yet mainstream. But in the United States, when people talk of human rights, they talk about the rights of sexual minorities for the most part. And I wonder where you stand in this.
Well, let me put it this way. I am deeply conservative in my views, but I don't make any other person's sexuality my business. What anyone does in the privacy of their homes is their business. I have never made it my business to be anybody's moral police. I'm not a pastor. I've never ever, unless your private behavior or morality affects the public good, I don't make it my business. Now, when it comes to public policy, I am of the opinion that it should not be the business of the state to regulate anybody's sexuality. That is as far as I'm willing to go in relation to gay rights. But I actually don't believe that gay rights has any relevance in Nigeria, if you ask me. You have to, first of all, be a citizen whose rights as citizens are protected by a judicial system that is protective of your rights as citizens. We live in a country where you can be victimized simply because a big man does not like you, like what you said, what you wrote, or something that you did, not necessarily because you violated any laws. You can simply be picked up in Nigeria and imprisoned because a man does not like you. So how do we begin to speak about gay rights in a country where we've just talked about human rights activism? At a most basic level of existence, you are demanding that the state that is meant to protect your rights should recognize your humanity. That is the reality of the Nigerian. Let's deal with my dear brother or sister, which I don't know which one Bobrisky might be at any moment in time. But anyway, all of a sudden, they are not spraying money in Nigeria again. He was the only person who has ever sprayed money in Nigeria. And since he's been to prison and back, they've stopped spraying money in Nigeria. We all know why Bobrisky became the scapegoat and why he was treated as he was treated, and people found validation for his maltreatment because of his sexuality or professed preferences. That is the society we are living in, where human rights do not exist. So how do we begin to debate gay rights? Gay rights are they are irrelevant in Nigeria. Irrelevant in the sense that nobody cares what you are doing in your room. Nobody cares. I really wouldn't want to get to a point where I'm having to ask whether it's a male bathroom or she bathroom. I like the idea of gents, ladies. I like the idea of certainty as to what I'm dealing with. But what you do in the privacy of your home is your business. It's none of my business. I'm nobody's moral agent or moral police.
I think that Mr. Oseni keeps having internet challenges. Whenever you are you all right now?
I'm speaking.
You can talk. We can hear you now. We can hear you.
They're not putting my video on. I don't know.
You can ask your question. We're hearing you with difficulties. Ask your question, please.
Sorry about the challenges. That's what it feels like. This thing every time.
You can also send. Go ahead.
I'd like to ask you, number one.
You're having. You're having.
Why we can't hear you?
I cannot hear you. So we cannot hear you, please. We can't hear you. You can send your question to my WhatsApp and I will read it.
Anybody hear me?
No.
Okay.
And okay. So are you saying, Dele, that there is no hope to reform this judiciary because of this superstructure? Is that what you're saying?
No. That's not what I'm saying, sir. What I'm saying is that you have to look at the Nigerian problem holistically. You have to look to the root of the problem. When the wellhead is polluted, if you do not clean the wellhead, if you do not unblock it, remove the pollutant, every water that comes from the well would be just as polluted as the well itself. The governance system in Nigeria is not structured for the benefit of the Nigerian. That is why it is impossible to point at any single sector that is functioning for the benefit of the people. The only persons who are deriving benefits from the Nigerian situation as it is today are the ruiners of Nigeria. They are the ones who also resist every opportunity and attempt to either change or to course correct because they benefit from things being the way they are. These are men and women across the length and breadth of Nigeria. They belong in every ethnicity, every religiosity, and they benefit from the putrefaction of Nigeria. That is why you find that when it is time for judicial appointments, their wives, their cronies, collaborators, those are the ones that are rewarded with judicial appointments. When you see the list of new judges, you find children of retired justices, serving justices. Ariwola made his relatives, he made them judges. You have a situation where the Nigerian legal system is being gradually turned into hereditary offices. That is the painful reality of the Nigerian. So when you ask if there is hope, I'm sorry, sir, let me conclude this. If when you ask if there is hope, yes, there is immense hope about the possibilities of Nigeria, but we must be honest enough about our situation to tell ourselves the truth, because it is only then that we can then begin to do the course correction that you are suggesting and demanding, sir.
Is it not the same with the army, with the police, with the universities? That
everywhere.
That recruitments are now based on your ethnicity, your religion. There are departments in which almost all the members are members of the same church. They're from the same place.
You see, what you must understand about these things is that it has nothing to do with ethnicity, religion, or any one of the many things they have used to divide us. What happens is this: when a ruiner takes position, executive position, and they've all turned the executives now, even the ones in the legislative arms, they are executive managers of their spaces. The judiciary, they are executive. So everybody is executing in their spaces. So what they do is, when they get there, they bring in the people that looks like them, that they feel comfortable with, whom they share. Is not really about their ethnicity. If you look at the, let's say for instance, the Redeemed Church cabal within the governance system in Nigeria, that has nothing to do with being Yoruba, but it just so happens that a lot of them are Yorubas. But the ones that are also Igbos or whatever amongst them get equally promoted along with them, but it begins to take on the coloration of the Yorubas that have colonized that space. But it's really, when you look at it, you find that it's diverse, but it's a function of access. And it's a function of how comfortable the ruiner occupying the space feels about the people he's bringing into the space. In some cases, it will manifest as ethnicity. In some cases, it will manifest as religion. But it's really nothing to, they are neither religious nor do they care anything for their ethnic nations. Because if they do, maybe the Fulanis would have the best spaces in Nigeria, or the Yorubas or the Niger Delta people. But look all around us, there are no exceptions when it comes to the putrefaction of Nigeria. So
Mr. Oseni, can you ask your question, please? You're back.
Yes, I'm back. I've been trying to connect a long time.
Now we can hear you now. Stay the way you are. We can hear you.
Prof, with due respect, sir, for some reason, some people were not unmuting me. Those that were supposed to unmute me were not unmuting me. That was the problem all this while. So now they are just unmuted me. But I apologize for the network challenge. I mean, that's what you get for living in Nigeria. I quickly want to talk about some politics in the politics section today. Nigeria lost Bayani Banjo yesterday. I want you to talk me through the dynamics of Nigerian politics after the demise of such a great man. at a time like this in our country where we don't have too many people speaking truth to power. That's number one. Second one is a comment. And comment from a point of view of having to write the verb of this book. And I read that book in and out. I read the manuscript, I read it in and out. For everybody that have reservations about the book, go and read the book. The problem, Prof, with due respect, that people don't read in this country, they just talk. A lot of people talk, they talk nonsense, they talk utter bunkum. You should go and read the book. So most of the people that claim they read the book, it was social media clips that they share, an excerpt they were sharing. You should go and read the book, and I think there will be clarity as regards that. So let's talk about politics first. Secondly, the second question I'll ask you is the obedient movement, and speaking for Peter Obi in the last election, which a lot of people thought it was part of the professional political class in Nigeria, based on his antecedents as former governor and all of that. And a lot of people did have their grouse. I say, you're rooting for Peter Obi, but he's just like them too. There's nothing different from them. The naysayers had their own fair share by saying, I mean, this was a man that was, preaching free market capitalism and all of that, but he was also part of the importation business in Nigeria. And he was under a Labour Party that believed in socialism. And there was a lot of theoretical misalignments. And you were part of those movements. And what would you say about the plenty journeymen that came to join you guys? And now water is finding its level, they are finding their square roots. One of them just left the other day. The question is, how much more are going to leave?
Okay. Rufai, it's good to see you, bro. Two basic questions you've asked. Chief Adebanjo's death at a time like this. Papa was 96 years old. He'd been in the trenches for 7 decades plus. He never held a single political office. Never, not one. No appointive, no elective. But he was a politician throughout his life. A party man, a party organizer. But there is something that marks Chief Adebanjo out, or let me say marked him out. He spoke truth without any apologies. He relished telling the truth. So as Nigeria became more and more of a moral wasteland, it became more and more something of a moral anchor who calls us back to be the best that we can be as human beings and as our brothers' keepers, people who are equitable and just in their dealings. Papa would have gone at some point or the other. And I think he gave us more than enough warning. He gave more than enough. He kept telling us, oh, he had his boarding pass and he was in the departure lounge. And for those of us who were blessed to have known him at close quarters, we also knew that in the last months, he'd not enjoyed good health. So for someone like me, I saw him on Monday before heading to Ekiti on Tuesday. And by the time I was looking to go see him on Friday morning and I was told that he had passed on that morning, I was happy. I was happy that he had gone to rest. I would miss him because he wasn't an old man for me. He was my friend. I grew up with my grandparents. They were in their 70s when I was handed to them a little over a year old. So I am used to dealing with old people. So he was my friend. And I will miss him. But let me say this as far as Nigeria's politics is concerned. I'm not sure we would ever have another Chief Adebanjo. But we must all become who we were meant to be. God did not expect us to mirror any other person. He only asked that we should be ourselves in pursuit of purpose. Not that we should be like anyone else. Nobody can be like Chief Adebanjo. I can't be like him. He couldn't be like Awolowo, whom he idolized all through his life. I can't be like him. I didn't know Awolowo at such close quarters, but I knew Chief Adebanjo. But I can't be him. I'm trying my best to even be myself. But all I can say is Nigeria will never have another one. But if we, you, Rufai, my brother Farouk, and every other one of us. We can leave Baba, who is a very old man. We pray that he lives long as well. That's Prof. But at the end of the day, we are the ones who have to rise and try to become as well. All Baba did was he told the truth unapologetically. He told it without subjectifying it. That was what marked his life. He never subjectifies the truth. He will look you dead set in the eye and tell you exactly what he thought without any bias, prejudice, or sentiment. That's what we all need to become. And that's being human, I guess.
There are other questions he
Nigeria
asked.
will miss him, but we are the ones who have to become.
He asked
yes,
you
about Peter Obi.
Yes.
About Peter Obi.
And what
I'll say is this.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, what I'll say is this. Rufai, more than any other person, more than any other person, you remember very clearly that I was deliberate in making clear that I never joined the Labour Party. I supported Peter Obi. You cannot be a true revolutionary if you lack the capacity to build coalitions. The obedient movement that emerged in 2022, 2023, and that is still present today is essentially a coalition of Nigeria's victims. It has many tribes within it, and I'm not talking about tribes in terms of ethnicity. I'm talking about tribes in terms of ideology. I am not I'm not a communist, but I'm not a free market person. I am essentially a socialist, a center-left socialist. But in the run-up to the 2023 election, the survival of the country, the rule of law, equity, fairness, and justice demanded that I had to support someone who carried the ideals that I wanted to see rule Nigeria, or through whom we might come closer to getting there. Now, you must remember that, as I said, there were different tribes. You had the tribes of the opportunists who saw the moment and seized it. Just the same way you had opportunists in the AD in 1999 who eventually killed the AD within 4 years to found their different parties. These ones saw an opportunity in 2022, 2023, and they grabbed it. The system allowed that to happen because there wasn't a party or a collective based on ideology. A coalition came together in the moment. It wasn't a coalition of like-minded persons who had the same ideology. It was simply a collection of people who believed themselves victimized by Nigeria. We supported Peter Obi based on our conviction that in the race, he was the best person, and equity and justice that we have built as a collective, as lopsided as that equity and justice might be, that we call zoning arrangement, demanded that if we were going to walk our walk, we had to support somebody of Southeastern origin. But as God would have it, or let me not bring God into a secular discussion, as our reason would be able to deduce, given a choice between him, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who unfortunately is today our president, and Atiku, he was by miles the better candidate. So we followed him, hoping that when he won, we would be able to reform Nigeria along the line that we had discussed with him as collectives. So that some people are leaving is no surprise. If I felt that there was a cohesive body for us all to sit down in, I wouldn't have been strident in telling you before the election that I wasn't a member of the Labour Party. And I would not have continued repeating it during and after the election. So I'm not surprised that some people are leaving as they have left. They needed to leave because it was merely an opportunity. They've taken it. It's like the lifetime of the opportunity has expired. It is up to those who collected themselves together as obedience to do better next time when selecting representatives for electoral contests.
Thank you, Mr. Oseni. Okay,
Okay, maybe I think yeah, I've asked too many questions, but I just wanted a follow up on this.
Yeah.
I want to play the devil's advocate here, so don't mistake my questions for my position on
Fair
the issue.
enough. Fair enough.
So first of all, there are two things that I want to ask. For someone of your ideological temperaments, your non-conformist ideological temperaments, do you find the name obedient, which is basically kowtowing to an authority, to be a contradiction? And I'm asking it because I have also seen that it's not just that it's a name, that as a group, it does seem that their opinions shift in the direction of the object of their ideological worship. For instance, when the Naira recoloring policy was introduced by the Buhari administration, everyone opposed it because it was inflicting untold torment on the people. But when Peter Obi came out to say they should support it, that it was good, suddenly the obedient movement moved in the direction of supporting it. So they actually lived up to the name. It's not just a name, it's that they performed obedience. And for someone with your non-conformist ideological temperaments, how do you reconcile being a part of such a movement? And then two, Peter Obi's economic policies are indistinguishable from those of his peers. He was in support of removing petrol subsidies on day one, and that's a quote from him. He was in support of letting the Naira float or find its value in the marketplace. So this double whammy is precisely what has brought Nigeria to where it is right now. And in fact, in the first few months of Tinubu's administration, a prominent obedient came to say that Tinubu was stealing Peter Obi's economic policies. So for someone who is center-left, which is what I am myself, how do you reconcile being the spokesperson of a person who is what someone would describe a right-wing populist?
Okay.
Libertarian right-wing.
Years ago, I witnessed a policy argument in the British press. It was something to do with the national health and the NHS. They were having, so they brought on the Labour spokesperson. He spoke to the policy. There was a need to increase the number of nurses, psychiatric nurses, care, because they noticed an upsurge in autism and those kind of neurological, so they needed to prepare for the future. He is to the interest of the people. He is to the interest of the people. I remember, and I said this on the record, and I stand to be corrected, and you can put this to any member of the Peter Obi presidential campaign team. One of the most contentious arguments we had as a member of the think tank were these policy decisions in relation to economic. And what I can tell you is this: it is actually a conflation of facts to suggest that Peter Obi would have executed these policies even if he were to be proposing them in the same way that Bulaba has done. If you say that you are floating the Naira, you cannot also be attacking the Naira by continuing to consume unchecked whilst refusing to produce. You cannot do this. They are not compatible. You cannot remove fuel subsidy and retain an Hajj subsidy and then retain a Jerusalem subsidy. You cannot be buying 5 billion naira yacht when you say you are cutting the cost of governance. You cannot be having a fraudulent Orosanye report implementation under a Peter Obi that me and you and all of us, the one thing that we could say for him was integrity in governance. So even if he would have, assuming, gone ahead to execute these same policies, he couldn't possibly, by any stretch of the imagination, have proceeded to execute them in the same manner. And even if he had, and we began to have the kind of negative reactions in the market, mass starvation and multidimensional poverty unleashed against the people like this, he would have pulled back or found some ways to moderate or mitigate. This is not an endorsement of such capitalist policies. But like as I have explained earlier on, there is no way you're going to. I'm a revolutionary. As far as I'm concerned, nothing can change in Nigeria unless the governance system changes. But I am not a violent man. I am a believer in the electoral process, in democracy that works. This one doesn't. And I am hoping that we can get ourselves to the point where we build a society where sufficient numbers of people, understanding that politics is about win, lose, give, and take. And then we will build a coalition of Nigerians committed to change. We might not always agree on policies or ideology, but we can agree on what is in the common good. That is the kind of argument I want to see when we are talking policy. The conservatives talk policy, the Labour talk policy, they disagreed on how to fund it, they disagreed on methodologies, but they agreed on what was in the common good. We don't agree common good in our country. That's the problem.
Mr. Oseni, go ahead.
Let me press that further, Dele. I did have Peter Obi on the show when he came, to talk about this policy, when Tinubu had just implemented these policies. And the question was, what will he have done? And that question is still a sticking point today. That day, the answers were not forthcoming. What he will have done. Because we keep mounting this talk about production. How are we going to produce? An economy, you don't produce up to 5,000 megawatts of electricity. In an economy that unemployment is great, you have less skills. So how would we have produced to be able to cushion the effect? So the question is, what will he have done? And I ask this question deliberately because in 2027, this is going to be the question to be asked on the campaign trail. What will he have done?
Look, Rufai, let me quickly say this. As I have said here on record, these are not policies that I would ordinarily sign up to. But in politics, if you are part of a coalition, so they have 10 issues, you agree with 6 or 7, the other party, you don't agree with the things and their means, and you don't even trust them to deliver. You hold your nose sometime, and then you hope that the integrity of the person, because policies are not just by themselves bad. Policies are either good or bad as a function of honesty in implementation and the capacity to learn and self-correct if you must. There is no hard and fast rule to what will work and what will not work. My own reflexes will not go in there and be like, oh yeah, remove subsidy. Oh yeah, float the naira. And I said this, and I'm not hiding it. These are policy disagreements between myself and the candidate. But that does not mean that I had sufficient basis to now say, okay, because I disagree with this man on this policy position, I'm not going to support him. There were sufficient other bases upon which I supported the man, and I trusted that even though I disagreed with these policies, they would not have been implemented in the same manner or the mannerless manner that these ones have been implemented in the last couple of years.
Can I push back a little bit here?
Yes,
go ahead.
Well, if to make projections about someone, you have to look back to what they did in the past. When Peter Obi was governor,
true,
there's no evidence for his governance that he would have been different from what Tinubu has become. I'm not going to give you a few examples. He was one of a few governors who refused to pay the minimum wage. When workers went on strike, he fired them. Doctors went on strike for more than a year, and people were dying in hospitals. Appeals were made to him. He refused to accede to the demands of the doctors until they called off the strike without the governor meeting their demands. ASU, Anambra ASU went on strike for more than 6 months for a mere increase in their salaries. He refused to accede to their demands and, in fact, caused the vice chancellor to be fired for siding with ASU. These three examples tell you someone who, and of course, the labor, he has also been identified as one of the most anti-labor governors in Nigeria. So to think that someone with that history will somehow be different in implementing these punishing neoliberal policies because you somehow believe in him, does that not, if someone describes that as being naive, how would you respond?
I am a very naive person. If I wasn't naive, I wouldn't be living in Lagos, Nigeria. I am by nature naive. I'm a believer. I hope. I have to be foolish to keep open in the space in which I live, a space that evaporates hope. But here is what I will say in response to the multiple accusations that you've leveled against the man. One,
they are not accusations, they are in the records.
No, I wouldn't dispute them. I have no knowledge of them. I have no basis upon which to engage you relating to them. All I can say is this. In 2022, a decision had to be taken. I was faced with 3 contestants. I'm not discounting the other persons who are in the race, but as contests go, there were 3 in the race. One of them had to take me closer to my goal. And that goal is to see a Nigeria ruled by law where I acquired the right to be a citizen and I stopped being a victim. Now, was I looking for an angel? Certainly not. I'm not one myself. Was I looking for someone that looked like me ideologically? Because there was none that was in the race. Because there was none that was in the race that sparked the imagination of the people. So we were never going to be taken closer. Let's be clear. It's a journey. I don't have a gun to decree the changes that I want to see. Since I do not have the guns to decree the changes, I have to become deliberate about building coalitions. We are not where we were in 2022. We are not where we were in 2023. A coalition of Nigerians disadvantaged, victimized, has been birthed. What happened to me during my incarceration? What happened in the outside world? I heard your voices, even though I was in prison. The Nigerians of yore are gone. They are awakening. Do you understand? That awakening is in spite of this man that you have described as anti-labor, anti-lecturer. In spite of all these negatives, he has succeeded in uniting fragments. And we must continue to unite them. That is without prejudice to his limitations as a human being. I'm not looking to deify him. I am sure he's completely human and he must or might have done all these things. But in 2023, if I have to look at the 3 men again, who was I supposed to support? Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who we are all enjoying today, except the 2 of you we are saying good morning to, whilst myself and Rufai are enjoying the heat of Lagos? Or should I have voted for Etiku, who has gone back to Dubai now?
So in your model is actually not new. Yeah. Remember, Chino Achebe joined Aminu Kano's party.
Yeah. Okay.
Shoyinka joined the Radical Party. He endorsed Mogalu. At the time, Achebe and Shoyinka joined Aminu Kano's party. So this model has been there. And I recognize you are talking about hope. Suppose there are people who don't believe in any of these political parties. Where does that leave us?
You see, I laugh when I hear people declare their non-belief, non-alignment, disinterest, disconnect from the Nigerian processes and the situation in our country. I laugh. And I laugh without mirth. There is no joy in the laughter. I laugh at the stupidity of victims who think that they can be disconnected from their sickening reality. That the person cannot connect does not render them any less of victims. You have to find persons who are looking for the advancement of the society in which you live, that you leave behind for your children, and take an interest in its governance. I think it is one of the Greeks. I can't tell. I'm sure Prof will tell us, or Rufai would also tell us. He said that when the wise abandon governance, they must of necessity suffer the governance of fools. So Nigerians continue to point that someone else has been the reason for the putrefaction of their society, when in reality, it is their own abandonment of their senses and responsibility that has empowered those who have ruined their society. So anyone declaring disinterest should actually look at themselves and ask who they expect to come and change their country.
Rufai, go ahead.
I mean, I want to talk about a phenomenon during that election, and as we go forward, I want you to speak to the conversations about Igbophobia. Then I also want you to speak to the conversations about oral politics and the orification of Nigerian electoral process, where our politics now need to be cleansed because a certain political party did not do well, and they now started carrying Oru days before election, which has now become a mainstay. The case of the Igbophobia is in relation to groups like Leucopedia and the scenario of Mama Nkechi and MC Oluomo, Yachidima, where a police officer, I think a police commissioner, came out to defend very rabid statements made, and also the case of Jennifer that was gutted with a knife all through that process. Because if we saw that when some people were not incumbent, are we sure that in 2027 election is not going to be an a la carte of Oro? And all sorts of sacrifice will be made with the Nigerian people, probably with beatings and laceration on their bodies.
Rufai, you know, Goebel, Hitler's minister, he said something years back. He said, if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. What has happened is that some people looked at the result of the presidential election and realized that there was no way they would ever win the gubernatorial election if they did not turn to hatred. So they created a bogeyman, and the bogeyman was the Igbo man. And the Igbo man was easy to make the bogeyman because the main opposition candidate comes from a woman of Igbo origin. So they reached for the tried and tested weapon: ethnicity. Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his cohort, they care nothing about ethnicity. They care absolutely nothing about ethnicity. When Papa Fashoranti's daughter was killed, the first question that were asked in rebuttal of the argument that she was killed by Fulani's headmen: where are the cows?
That's right.
Bola Ahmed Tinubu never identified with anything Yoruba. He has a lot of friends across the length and breadth of Nigeria. If there is ever a man who networks across Nigeria, he's the one. He doesn't care about your ethnicity as long as you have some use to his empire. You are welcome. As long as you are not demanding space, you are not contending space with him, you are welcome. You can be wuru for all he cares. If you like, be pink, not even yellow. It doesn't matter to him whether you are a Christian, a Muslim, or you don't care about God. As far as the man is concerned, is a function of power and contestation for space. So, a man came running for the office of the governor in Lagos State, whose mom is of Igbo origin. Unfortunately, the young man made some communication mistakes that actually made it even easier for those looking to make him a subject of hatred, tribal hatred, ethnic hatred. He made it easy for them. Not that they would have found any other excuse. It was easy, but he made it easy. He played into their hands in certain ways. So they maxed it out and they made it a bogey. Oh, Igbo man wants to take over Lagos. Oh, Igbo don't take over Lagos. Oh, I want to make by Kumawa Lowo. This one, that one. The fact of the matter is that Lagos is as welcoming of the Igbo man as it has always been. Lagos welcomes everyone who has his money to spend or has his honest labor to offer. That is Lagos. But this Igbophobia was merely a political tool that has now gone out of hand. Because when you are using hatred to unite a people politically against another people, what you do is that for the less sophisticated or the sophisticated morons, educated, certificated but uneducated, they embrace this hatred and they do not understand that those who have employed it have merely used it for political purposes. They internalize the hatred and they become enemies with their fellow victims in advancement of their enemy's cause. The second part is the horrification of our politics. It is linked. The horrification policy is a way of building Yoruba nationalism in support of a fraud. If you can use Yoruba religion to bring the people together, pretend to be sponsoring or supporting Isheshe, and then use it as a vehicle to build Yoruba support, develop Yoruba nationalist consciousness so that it might be pressed to the political service of a man. Not necessarily because the person gives two monkeys, pardon my French, about the Yoruba or the Yoruba nation itself. He doesn't care. So this horrification thing must be seen as being hand in glove with Igbophobia. It is entirely political, and it is incumbent on good men and women to speak out against it. It was in furtherance of this that you saw them renaming streets in traditionally Igbo neighborhoods like Ajegunle, Okokomaiko, conveniently forgetting how those streets came to be named after the Igbo persons. So all this thing is about politics, is about fear of losing Lagos State, and is about dividing the people so that they do not unite to confront their common oppressor. That's all it is.
So new coalitions are building as we talk. Rufai Aregbe and others, they are building new coalitions for 2027. What do you think about this?
Baba, let me say this. When the antelopes sees coalitions of leopards and lions, and then they begin to get excited and clap, they must always remember that the menu is stocked with antelope. The reality of the matter is that the Nigerian winning class has never been in disarray. They might have disagreements in relation to power sharing or how to share the loot, but they don't have any problem. So when you see them saying that they are forming coalitions, I'm not excited about those kind of fraudulent coalitions. It's the people themselves that need to be building bridges based on truthful ideas. Not all, if the politicians are getting together and they are building alliances, the alliances they are building are not for the liberation of the Nigerian. It's to ensure that they capture power, retain the same evil governance systems, profit from it, and be the ones administering the pause to the exclusion and detriment of the people. So those the coalitions that you see them forming doesn't interest me. The coalition that interests me is the one that brings the people together, get them to recognize what is in their own common interest, recognizing the commonalities of their own afflictions, and then confronting the governance system to change it so that it works for them. That politicians are meeting to build systems, it doesn't excite me. I'm not interested in them. They are cool.
So global politics, Trump is a big man.
It's the best thing that has happened to us in a long time.
In terms of what?
Now we wake up, if we would ever wake. There is a scramble for Africa going on. I believe this year makes it, is it the 125th anniversary of Berlin? But there is a new partitioning going on, and we are slipping through it. Once upon a time, they sat in Berlin, and then they had their partition. They brought out their pen, and they started drawing lines as a partitioned Africa. The same thing is happening again. That is why you hear Kemi Badenoch running her mouth and talking about the northern establishment and seeking to drive a wedge between North and South. It had never happened in British history that a leader of opposition, whether Labour or Conservative, would speak so deliberately against the unity of Nigeria. Nigeria has an imperfect union, yes. Nigeria can do a lot to tweak its governance systems, yes. But since when did it become the business of the leader of the government opposition in Britain to speak to Nigerian issues in the manner that Kemi Badenoch has spoken to our issues? There should be some measure of sensitivity that should have prevented her from talking as she did. And the fact that it wasn't just off-the-cuff remarks, but an opinion piece in The Spectator, which is more or less the official arm of the Conservative Party, tells you that that's official party line, and you are seeing the birth of the new empire. So there is a scramble going on. You see increased French influence in Nigeria, even as it is losing its influence across the Sahel. And then you see the disruptor in chief in America coming with his own game. The reality is that we are going to have to cotton on to the fact that the world is changing. It's changing at a dizzying pace. Those who rule Nigeria are either completely moronic in their refusal to respond to these changes, or they have already taken a decision that Nigeria should be allowed to die in the fashion that is desired by those who cobbled it together originally. So when you talk about global politics, reality is we are nowhere to be found right now. We are merely victims reacting to events. We don't seem to have any strategic engagement with the world. We're just victims to whom things are happening. Our president goes cap in hand everywhere to beg. We're begging people who know that we are richer than them. So somebody somewhere is lying to himself. Yoruba says that two people cannot be equally fooled by a lie. If the liar does not know that he's lying, the person being told the lie must be aware that he's being lied to. So as far as I'm concerned, it's wake up time for Africa. I thank Mr. Trump for his honesty. I don't always like what he has to say, but at least he's honest in telling us who we are and what he thinks of us.
Okay.
So if somebody brings a mirror to me, it's for me to decide whether I like what is in the mirror or not.
Mr. Oseni, okay. Yeah.
Yes, and I mean, very apt point, Dylan. In fact, the scramble for Africa is already over. They've shared the continent again, like they did in Berlin over 100 years ago. And the new actors are the likes of Turkey, which is trying to set up a military base out of Chad, pumps a lot of drones into Chad. A lot of African countries buy their Bayraktar drone that was used in Ukraine. Russia with Wagner doing very strongly in Sudan, stealing gold and stealing minerals. The French trying to have a realignment with new liaisons like Nigeria and the likes. The British still trying to hold on to the little they have. The Chinese doing a lot with their Belt and Road Initiative. And the Americans also coming to the party, you know, with USAID, but to convert it to trade has always been their problem. And this takes me to the conversation about very right-wing Representative Perry, who have been known to say a lot of conspiracy theory things. You know, this was the man that even when he was in the military, allegations of lies and everything against him, but he said something very profound. But I also want to sort of like plot a tedious link. My opinion is, let's call for investigation as regards the funding of Boko Haram. Because it's too good to be true that all of a sudden, after, and I'm going to draw a tedious link, after Goodluck Jonathan said no to gay marriage, there was an intensified effort with the onslaught of Boko Haram. The CIA brought out their wonky report saying that Nigeria was going to disintegrate by 2015. Then there were lots of actions. Obama would not sell us weapons under something he called the Leahy laws. Until when Donald Trump came, that's when he started to sell us weapons. And we saw the increased activity of Boko Haram. Even if a part of me as a journalist will look for empirical facts, and I will not believe a thing that Perry says, because when you look at the antecedents in his presentation, he didn't give an allusion that the line item of what was budgeted for was to Boko Haram. It just said they were budgeting it for education and scholarship for girls in some nations, and he feel because girl education in those nations was suppressed, then it must be going to groups like Boko Haram, ISIS, and all of that. And to a large extent, we have seen that there's no link between all of these groups sometimes. To establish a link has been difficult. And also, historically, I will never forget what the Americans and the CIA and a company called ITT did to a right-wing Chilean leader, Salvador Allende, in the 60s. And now the ITT, the left-wing leader, beg your pardon, Salvador Allende, socialist leader, Salvador Allende, and now the ITT was used as a funnel pipe, and a newspaper called El Mercurio to be able to destabilize the election campaign of Allende, which finally came in. Exit note says by the CIA that we didn't support the coup by Augusto Pinochet, but the truth is most of the actions led to emboldening forces like Pinochet. So with that at the back of my mind, I'll ask you, what's your take on all of this?
Rufai, Yorubas have this proverb. They say, "Bí onígbá bá ṣe pé igbá ẹ̀, náà ṣe máa bá pé." As you label your vessel, or the use to which you put your vessel is the same to which every other person would employ it. I believe that Africans have been largely victimized because we have principally victimized ourselves. If a person declares his foolishness constantly, you can hardly blame those who take advantage of the fool. And I use those words deliberately. See, The Americans, or let me say the West, even the East, have never looked at us as equals, those to be treated and deserving of equality. We have always been I'm not playing a victim mentality thing here. We Africans, each and every one of the races we've come across have enslaved us. Everyone have enslaved us. But our enslavement is made possible simply because we have also allowed it. And it had been persons within our communities that have validated the chains of oppression and enslavement. Now, if you look to Nigeria and what happened with Jonathan, Goodluck Jonathan, let's assume, let's even take what Perry said, let's take it at his own value. Because there are basis to believe that Boko Haram had external help. More than enough reasons to believe that. The way it grew exponentially from a ragtag collection of Almajiris who were in use for political reasons, and then that snowballed. All of that is suggestive of some sort of destabilization plot. But before China became what it is today, I remember that the Great Wall of China did not keep out its enemies because somebody kept opening the gate for the enemies to come in spite of the fact that they had the wall. So the CIA cannot do anything in Nigeria without Nigerians. The Boko Haram person is leadership. They're Nigerians. I don't know what America did with USAID, but I know what America did with Patrice in Congo. I know what America did in other places. I saw what it did in Libya with Gaddafi. I don't need to be told that America cares nothing for us, or that its primary interest in us is about real politics. What kind of economic gain or benefit can be extracted without any real thought as to what is of benefit to us. But that is normal. It is up to us to decide what is in our own enlightened selfish interest as a collective and then pursue it. I can't blame the Americans for taking advantage of us if we have not defined what our own interests are. America does not hold me a duty to care for me or about me. I hold me a duty to build a country that prioritizes our own interests as a collective and then as a race. So all these things that America does, that the West does, they do it everywhere. It's normal. They went to war. Remember, Britain almost pulverized China simply because China would not allow opium to be traded in its country. So it's normal. This evil is normal. It is we who have further victimized ourselves by our inability to identify what our own interests are. And then we have ruiners in place of leaders who do not even know what to do with power. They are not even possessed by the genius of insanity to want to build a country that has the best road networks or has the best rail network, or even just pick one single part or aspect of our country. Let one of them just be possessed and decide that I want a country that has the best airports, or has the best roads, has the best rail system, has the best educational system, has the best healthcare delivery system. They are not possessed by any insanity to be remembered for any greatness. So how can I blame the British or the American or any one of them for taking advantage of us? We victimized ourselves. And until such a time as when we decide what is in our enlightened selfish interest, this will continue. Talumare said, who will not take advantage of the fool?
Thank you very much. And I want to invite members of the audience. This is the way I would like to proceed. For our guests to take some rest. It will not be one-on-one. You write down some of the questions and comments, and then you can respond to them. This will allow you to take some kind of break. So, members of the audience, it's your turn now to pose some questions.
Can I ask one last question before that happens?
It's not even going to be last. We can throw it open to you. What's the question, please?
Well, it's about it's something a little more personal. Not personal in the sense you probably think implying. There is this abiding distrust of critics because historically some of the most virulent critics of government and of systems, when they find themselves in power, they become indistinguishable from the people and the system that they criticize. And a lot of people tell me that you've spent almost your entire adult life criticizing people. So there are people like you who have said even worse things about people in government. When they get into power, they are consumed by that which they have criticized. And so it got to the point where I myself doubt my sincerity, although I don't doubt my sincerity, but the fact that almost everyone who has been a critic and finds themselves in power, is indistinguishable from the people they criticize, causes me to say, okay, am I seeing certain things because of where I stand? And that the people in power, or people who used to be critics and find themselves in power and are suddenly against, the things that they stood for, are they also seeing the things that they see because of where they stand? Now I'm taking that to, I'm asking you now that what's your take on this? Because this is something I grapple with myself. If Peter Obi had won and you are going to be in government, maybe you're going to be Minister of Information, what would your position be? Because there's still a chance that you could be in power. What would your position be when you find yourself against some of the things you had talked about and had railed against, with such articulateness and brilliance?
Farouk, can you be talking when you are chopping?
Yeah,
that's it.
Let me quickly answer that question, Farouk. About, I think, a couple of weeks before the 2023 election, there was a private discussion. Somebody who is pretty close to Peter Obi walked up to me and he was telling me how they had my name penciled down for a role in government if the candidate won. And I laughed. We were at the Federal Palace for an event. I'll keep his name out for confidentiality purposes. So I laughed. I said, number one, you don't know me at all. If you had any knowledge of who I am, you will know that I will never, ever, ever accept any role in that government. Rufai will remember that I have been asked that question in live interviews during the election, before the election, and I made it very clear. I had zero interest in any governance. And my reason is simple. In fact, let me say reasons. They are very simple. One, I can never swear an oath to preserve the 1999 fraud. There is no way I can hold the 1999 fraud, that decree 24, and say that I swear to uphold or swear an oath of allegiance. Do you understand? Nigeria is a fraud as it stands. It does not revolve on the people's will. So there was no way. So I had said this to people privately before the election, and I've said this publicly. And if there is nothing else that should be clear about me by now, it is the fact that I rise and fall by my word. I came to the public space and said clearly that I wasn't going to take a role. But the question is, why wasn't I going to take a role? I have already said that without changing the governance system, you cannot change anything in Nigeria. I said, even on Arise, I believe it was Rufai who asked me the question that day, and I responded that bring 100 daily Faro to me. We cannot change Nigeria without changing the governance system. The totality of my involvement in Peter Obi's election was to make sure that we come closer to changing that system, because I believe that with a man like him in power, we would have worked to change that system so that it begins to favor the victims instead of the oppressors. So I would have remained outside to ensure that he was honest to his word. I would have held him to his word, kept up the pressure, and that was the role I had assigned myself. If and when Nigeria achieves a governance system that works for the people, I would be happy to even take on the office of the dog catcher. Whatever office that might be assigned to me within a system that prioritizes and respects the people, I'll happily take. But office in this system, just like Professor Fawola just pointed out, you don't talk when you are eating. The only thing they are doing in this place right now under the governance system that we operate is eat. Nobody is serving anybody. The waiters are eating. The cooks don't chop everything finish for kitchen. Nothing remain for job for the people. So I wouldn't have accepted any role. No.
Thank you. Members of the audience, I see many distinguished members here. Simon Aikwa, please, we will spotlight you, identify yourself to give people the opportunity. Please don't take too much time. Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Simon Mary Ayoka. I'm a professor of theology and ethnic studies at the University of Portland in the United States. Thank you very much for this. I really enjoyed the conversation. I have a few questions and a comment to make. The first comment is to say that the role of a critic is not to govern in the political system, but rather to help the political system to see its blind spots. And I think that's the mistake we tend to make in Africa, that when the critics start speaking, we think, oh, this is the Messiah, and we give them political power. And that's not where their gift is. And then they don't do well, and they will start blaming them. So the vision of a critic is quite different from that of a political leader. That said, I was a bit surprised with what you said, Oseni, about the gays, Obama's policy towards Nigeria. I was wondering, are you insinuating that the US is weaponizing the gay rights conversation as a way of a foreign policy towards Nigeria? Because that's a weighty issue, and that needs to be clarified before we know it. The gays in the country become the victim, the scapegoat. I say this because that's an area I research into. And then quickly, I would like to also say that the issue of the gay rights, because when Del Faro to me, when you were talking, I think you brought this up. You said the fundamentals are the basics of existence in the country. Gay rights is not really the issue. I think that's what we are supposed to make to believe, so that the system can perpetuate itself by divide and conquer. The rights of the people are rights. There's nothing like one right is more important than the other, because the gay person is as equally a dignified creature who should have social rights in a state. And then finally, there is, I think you are saying it, but you are also not saying it, Dele Farotimi. The construction of Nigeria or Africa today, it's working perfectly as it ought to work. So I think when we are critiquing the governments, we just think that these are morons who sit in office and then they have no agenda or whatever. It's a system. And if you want to undo this system, you have to study it as a system. Post-colonial Africa is a system working exactly how it ought to work. It has to be demolished in a systematic approach. So we need political psychologists, we need social psychologists, we need critics, we need everyone who can study systems to be able to understand how this system is working and how it can be undone. Without doing that, we are just wasting our time. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, our panelists, write down the questions and comments you are not going to answer now. Please. Tola, please, write it down. Tola Oshunuga. Sorry if I don't pronounce your name. Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm Professor Tola Oshunuga. I live in United Kingdom. I'm currently in Lagos, Nigeria. Mr. Adele, I know you don't want to comment on so many things about the court cases, but my question to you is: you never had your day in the court. That's what you demanded in that book. You wanted your day in the court. I read the book from first page to the last page. Now, if these cases were thrown out of the court, will you still go ahead to substantiate the allegations you made? That's number one question. Number two question, were you disappointed? Were you disappointed that people, the royals, they interceded without your consent? That's number two short question I have for you. The last question I have for you is this. Thinking about how to reposition Nigerian system, especially the governance, would you not be appropriate if you come with a position paper? I know government, they don't listen sometimes, but with a position paper, a recommendation about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, guys, if you can do this is my position paper, or push this through the National Assembly, would that not be okay? Finally, I wish people could read that book, like you said. Those who are criticizing you have never read that book. Like they say, if you want to keep a secret, put in a book, Nigerians won't read. That's a popular saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Babaye. Babaye. Babaye is a prominent socialist for many decades. Where have you been? You've disappeared.
No, I don't disappear. I'm fine, sir. And I'm still working for the same people, the working class.
No, but isn't it that the space has been vacated by the left?
Well, no, I wouldn't say so. I would say there are evolution of how things are, and you have actually for a long time you haven't had the critical mass of the left like what you have with the African Action Congress and the Revolution Now campaign in the 21st century. I mean, after the campaign for democracy efforts of the 90s and the civilianization, we haven't had until 2018, 2019. So it's an evolution of it. The left has largely been more groupuscules, and yeah, so we're working on things, and the masses are the one that bring change.
But the socialists have become socialites, aren't they?
No be lie. Some of the socialists, well, some of us signed for life, and I'm happy that my older left comrade, Professor Ezekiel Agbotu, is also here. And well, DF always says he's not a socialist, but I would say he's an associate socialist.
Okay, Baba, what's your question? It's good seeing you again.
It's my pleasure, sir. It's my pleasure. DF, it's a pleasure seeing you again. I'll play the devil's advocate with you, DF, and it is on two fronts. One, you always stress the question of that the problem is that we are not yet citizens, the Nigerians are not citizens. But is it not that what citizen is de facto, and this speaks to what the first person said about that, the system is actually working the way it is meant to work? You understand? Can the citizen be any more citizen than what it is now in a neo-colonial Nigeria? And that relates to the question of, is it not about how the ruling class rules and the state that the exploited classes are thrown into in a new colony? Because the ruling class largely not just enjoy all what citizens would enjoy outside, and the one that they cannot get materially, they can travel out. They even have impunity. They can even go, and disregard duties and curbs of citizens in advanced capitalist countries. So is that framing of that the issue is about citizenship not faulty as against situating the problem in the new colonial dimensions of capitalism in Nigeria? And relatedly, the second has to do with, in the 2023 elections, a lot of our people vex with you, say, we're expecting you to be with the AAC and all that. I mean, some of us, as you know, even though we missed you, we were like, you did not only have a right to the position you did take, but you had engaged internally on why, and even where we didn't agree with you, we could understand where you were coming from and your perspective. But in the wake of things, I mean, don't you see, because also don't forget with the Labour Party, before we even look at obedience, I was deputy national secretary of that party for a while, you know. I'm a founding leader of that party. And the fact is that, doesn't this show that reformist politics cannot take us anywhere? We cannot even win lasting reforms outside revolutionary politics. Shouldn't this inform your position in terms of partisanship in 2027? And if so, how? Thank you. Baba, I hope I haven't spoken for too long. Shoki Lobe Ogisa, you know.
Dele, you want, okay. Dele, please respond very quickly.
Yeah, a lot have been said. I know you prefer that we wait for each person to ask their questions, but it tends to make it difficult to address the issues.
That's fine. That's fine. Respond.
So I'd like to quickly run through a few of these things, a few of these questions that have been. To make any group. What I was pointing to is the fact that the average Nigerian who is not gay does not even have human rights. That is the most basic of rights, which is why in a democracy, after 26 years of a democracy, you are still talking about human rights activism, because the right of the human being is not ascribed to the person who is trapped within the space called Nigeria. That is the reason you have the human rights. We are not talking about specialized rights like child rights, gay rights, minorities rights. No, we're talking about human. So I'm saying that before you even start talking about gay rights, deal with the humanity of the person first. When you've dealt with his humanity, we can now begin to talk about the special classes of rights demanded by those who require specialized treatment. So I am not diminishing their rights in any way, shape, or form. I'm simply saying, let's deal with the basic rights to exist as a human being. That's the first one. Now, when you talk about the substantiation of the allegations contained in my book, I'm surprised that this keep cropping up. I wrote a book. The fraud that I alleged happened in the face of the court. I'm not talking about something that happened in a corner somewhere. I'm talking about something that happened right there in the face of the court. I went as far as to say that the Supreme Court has a choice. It may decide that what it has done, it did either out of fraud or it did out of incompetence. One or the other would explain what has been done, but you have to settle on the one that you prefer. Those are forthright statements, unambiguous, and not open to any other interpretation beyond what it says. If the persons that I have written about believe that what I have written, because truth is self-sustaining, it does not require me to bring justification or proof from under a table in a file somewhere. They are right there in the book. So whether somebody now went and begged on my behalf, it is up to the person who has been begged to decide whether they are happy. I didn't go looking to fight anybody. So if somebody who was fighting me decided that they don't want to fight anymore, well, that's fine. What I would do, Yoruba says that the name you give your child at his naming is inside of you. They have decided, as far as the criminal prosecution is concerned, is in abatement, they are withdrawing the charges. That's fine. If you say you are not fighting me in the criminal court again, why should I insist that you must keep fighting in the criminal court? But we have 4 cases, civil suits. I too might be bringing suits. Other persons who are similarly affected, my workers in the office who had their phones seized, people who are elbowed on camera, they are within their right to seek legal redress. All those will be determined as we proceed. So as far as being disappointed with the royal fathers, I didn't send them on any errand. They didn't ask me any questions. I have no reason to be disappointed or elated by what they have done. They are within their right to seek peace. I think it is the Bible that says, peace upon those who seek peace, peace unto the peacemaker. They shall be called the children of God. That the royals have decided to go and seek peace in Ado Ekiti. I'm happy that they have done that. I'm happy that Chief Afefa Babalola has equally decided he doesn't want to fight again. I don't know what else anybody could have done to me that hasn't been done. I spent 21 days of my life in a hole for doing nothing but telling the truth. So if somebody now says they are not fighting again, that was on them. It's not on me. I don't have any disappointment with anyone. What they did to the best of their own ability. They believed that it was right to find peace. I'm happy they did. So as it relates to position paper, look, I wrote 2 books specifically setting out draft constitutions for Nigeria. I didn't just bellyache. I sat down, I picked the 1963 constitution, which is the last constitution Nigerians wrote for themselves. It arose out of consultations that changed the 1960 independence constitution. I used it as a model, and we produced a constitution, a draft constitution, a proposed one. Let's ask, please, if we are saying this is bad, we must at least propose an alternative. We proposed an alternative. It's annexed to the book. I made the book available free for people to download, and it's still there till today. That book is at least 6 years old now. It's been available for free download from its first anniversary. I wrote a second book. I titled it The Imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution. I made clear that you cannot change anything in Nigeria without having a revolution that changes the governance system. And I set out the way to do so. Now, this brings me to my brother, Baba Aye. Baba Aye and I date back almost like 40 years. That's how far back we go. At least 30 plus years that we've known ourselves in the struggle for Nigeria. Once upon a time, my brother's space was enlarged. I noticed that in recent time, he has shrunk. I think that Baba Aye has gone and done that thing that they do to the atomic that Alamie went to do. The man has slimmed down. But he said something. He said something about reformist politics. You see, I'm not a gradualist. I know exactly where I want to go. I want to see a Nigeria that has changed.
Rufai?
I think they are hanging.
Professor Sadiq Abdullahi. Professor Sadiq Abdullahi, you have the floor. Unmute yourself, sir.
I am.
We can hear you now. We can hear you.
But we lost Dele.
I think I'm back now.
Oh, okay. Professor Sadiq, please talk. No. Please unmute yourself, sir. We had you before.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Where are you calling from? Where are you calling from?
Miami, Florida. Farouk and Rufai, I've been following you guys for years. I was on 2023. I was on RAS TV with Abati, right, talking about sports and all of that stuff. Yes, a lot of information, and then of course our guests. I've not read your books, but listening to the when I joined. The historical context, both you and Rufai were trying to talk about the global politics. I am a curriculum specialist and a global education professor, right? Now, let me go straight to what I heard that really concerns me. Number one, okay, our guest does not have zero interest in governance. Nigeria
Nigeria is a fraud. I am not a gradualist. So I hear all of this now, right? And then as an educator, and I'm beginning to see, what is it that we need, to begin to really start, addressing the fundamental problem facing Nigeria. I've been in America for 45 years, so I know how American system works, right? Politically, economically, and then socially, right? And I know how the forces, the push and pull. So I understand. Okay, I'm also a Lagos boy, but I'm from Kaduna State. Okay, so now for me, as so listening, I disagree. That the gradual that you're not a gradualist. You are. Somebody mentioned revolutionary. I don't believe that. I mean, Nigeria has matured. So in the sense that we need a different approach. So let me go straight to what I'm interested in. Why can't we use the model that America used in the after the Civil War in Reconstruction and public education, as a way to improve public schools, so that the books that he has written that the youth don't read, right? Nigerian generally do not read, so how can he now let us now go back and use both the gradualist approach and then, of course, the non-gradualist approach? So that is my question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Iselen Agbon, give me if I don't pronounce your name very well. Agbon. You have the floor, please. Agbon.
He has not unmuted himself.
Can you unmute yourself? It's not from our end. It's not from us. It's from you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. DF, I needed to ask you.
Please, can you spotlight him?
Yes.
Can you pin him? Technical people, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm speaking from Dallas, Texas, and I really wanted to talk to DF about this conceptualization of Nigerians as victims. This idea that Nigerian people are victims. When you are in an oppressive situation, seeing yourself with a concept of a victim negates your capability for autonomous action, which does not fit the history of our people. We are an oppressed people, but we have been a people that have been in constant resistance. There is a history of resistance, whether farmers, peasants, workers, against the very system that you say need to change. If you say the problem is the system and 100 DF will not change it from within, it means it can only be changed from outside by mass action. And we have a history of mass resistance. So this concept that is going in Nigeria, that Nigeria happens to you, that you're a victim, that you are victimized, negates the historical reality of resistance that we saw in August and we saw in October that drove the military back to the barrack, that actually have constructed what we know as Nigeria. Because the Nigeria I know is not the Nigeria of the ruling class. I've never been in their meeting. I've never been in their politics. I don't know how to share money. The Nigeria I know is the one that wake up to the smell of tear gas and burning tire in the streets. That is the Nigeria I relate to. It is we that build our history. So I'd like you to speak.
I think there is a misunderstanding here that must be quickly cleared up. Two misunderstandings, really, but the most egregious of them is the one that is constantly misinterpreting the context of usage of the word victim. If you notice, when I call us victims in Nigeria, I am also always very quick to make a distinction. I talk about the victim who is aware of his victimhood and the victim who is unaware. I speak also to the weaponization of ignorance and poverty. Now, I am a victim who is aware of my victimhood. My awareness of my state of existence in my country is what leaves me constantly agitated and constantly working to change the reality of my victimization. And it is why I am constantly trying to awaken other people to the fact of their own victimization as well. So what I am doing, when I say we are victims, I am speaking to the objective reality of the Nigerian who is victimized by the governance system that is meant to protect him as a citizen. And I speak to the loss of citizenship in light of the reality of the absence of the rule of law, which is meant to guarantee and preserve the rights of the people by treating them equally. So when I speak to the victimhood of the Nigerian, it has nothing to do with anything metaphysical. It is a fact of his existence. So I am not speaking of us as victims so that we might accept or be accepting of victimhood. I speak of us as victims so that we become aware and then organize ourselves to resist and to break the yoke of that oppression. When I spoke about reformist and gradualism, I was speaking to the fact that, one, that you are a revolutionary does not mean that you will not get there gradually, but you must have focus and understanding as to what your end game is. That I did not support the AAC or its candidate in the last election is a simple reality of the fact that we were nowhere near being able to provide a platform for engagement for the people in that season. That was the basis. Thank you.
Abimbola Adelakun, you have the floor.
Oh, my sister. Is that the lady at Punch?
Yes.
Oh, I have. Oh, yeah, show your face, though. I have to see you. Thank you. Hi.
Hello, good morning.
How are you? You said you've left us.
How are you doing? It's good to see you.
Very well. Thank you.
I should start by saying I really liked your book. I like the efforts and I like the boldness that you put into it. And listening to you today, I am still very happy that you remain as strong and as unshakable as ever. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my question to you is actually in two parts. I don't know if you saw the recent interview by Chief Bisi Akonde, where he talked about the End-SARS movement as sponsored by some people in America. And he was like, okay, they did it to conspire against Tinubu, but he overcame them all. And what I actually find interesting, right, is the way he's like some kind of rhetoricized, it's a weapon of warfare, right? You're weaponizing rhetoric. And so this, for me, is the question that I would like to ask. And I know whether you believe it or not, Rufai, doesn't matter, but you brought it up. And that's why I find it very interesting that it's getting into this discourse. And so the point I want to make is that when people start to use all of these kinds of rhetoric, they are usually to achieve a kind of political agenda. And it's to mobilize people, the tribe of the disaffected, the resentful, all the people who are out of power, marginal. And that's why they do it. And so how is all of this going to feature for us in 2027 when we are going to go to the polls again for another round of election? Is it going to, and I know this is for me asking a question of what role do you think you will play in the 2027 election? In what way will you, where are you going to come in again? Are you going to mobilize or part of the obedient movement or another person who surfaces at that point? And all of these that we are talking about, all these narratives that are running riot all over social media. How is it useful to mobilize us into another kind of coalition that can stand up in 2027? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Oseni, hold on. Oseni has been, you want to talk, please talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I must have to say, but my sister Adelakwa, I'm one of your biggest fans. You know, I can't always wait to always read your write-up when it comes out. Thank you so much for all the great work you do, and thank you so much for your thought process. But I think a lot of people are misquoting me, and even with Prof. And this is the point I made. In journalism, what I did is balancing every side of the argument. And I specifically said, I'm not oblivious of what America did with Salvador Allende, which I have facts on, which are declassified documents by CIA. And also, you can go and check the court records of the military officer Schneider that was killed before Augusto Pinochet took over. That I was talking as regards facts. I also put a caveat out there talking about the antecedents of Perry as a conspiracy theorist. And I think if you play back my speech, I said that. And this man is a known conspiracy theorist. So I am not going to believe it, but also we should investigate. And just like the first assertion I made, I was plotting a tedious link. And I said well enough, after the act, the Same-Sex Prohibition Act that was passed, we saw other events that happened. America not granting the Leahy laws and the likes. It was a tedious link. It was not because, oh, I don't have empirical facts to be able to prove that it was because of same-sex marriage and all of that. But also when you check, in the case of Uganda, there have been copious notes of how America has threatened as regards aid when Uganda was not ready to play ball on same-sex marriage. And we also know that there are some specific aids that are released to you based on the rights of same-sex marriages or people, you know, that have that ideology. So I think there's a lot of misinterpretation. I do not take Perry's word because there's no empirical proof. If you check his report, in fact, I think I remembered I said this, that there's no line item correlation that the money was going to Boko Haram. All he said was that money was going to girl child education in areas where girl child education was not being supported, and he made the assumption that it was going to ISIS and a couple of other groups, which has not empirical facts. So I deal with facts. So I'm not a bandwagon of, subject matter, but I can also weigh out every side out possible when I'm making my comparative analysis on the issue, and that's what I have done. So I don't believe in any bunkum. Perry has said, I am not a fan of Trump and Trumpism. I just like to stick to the empirical facts. Based on today, it's just an assertion. There are no empirical facts to that matter.
Thank you. Let me add a little. You said the CIA predicted Nigeria was going to collapse in 2015. I want to correct that. That's not the case. It was students who were asked to have projections about what might happen in Nigeria and other places that the US gets its oil from. And that was a scenario that was built by students at the equivalent of their war college. So they, at no point did CIA ever predict that Nigeria was going to collapse. But that information has somehow gone around.
So based on my reportage, the INEC chairman also muted it in a forum. That was based on a quote. Based on my reportage, the INEC chairman, you can go and check it, I think it was Jega then, also muted it in different forums. And it had also been muted by top political personnel in different forums. I saw that report of MAPE. In fact, the Council of Foreign Relations came out and said they did not. But also based on the reportage, it was amply clear that a lot of key people had said that. And that's why I made that point.
I think it was Campbell that first came out with that.
Assertion. Yeah. So, and it was topical. It was topical news then. So for me, if I don't get my facts, I don't talk.
It was not CIA.
Yeah, I don't.
Anyway,
hold on, Dele, hold on. Rufai system is working well now. Whenever if you have some questions that you should have asked, let me know. Former President of ASU, Professor Abiodun Ogunyemi, what is your question? Former ASU President. Yes, please.
Is muted.
You need to. Thank you very much, Prof.
Yes.
I greet everybody in the house. Let me start by acknowledging Farouk, who is an unrepentant critic of my union, ASU. But at some point, he started to see the other side, and he started acknowledging that the union is doing some good work.
And he's thinking too, hold on, he agrees with me that the salaries are poor, they are low, and the government should do something about that.
Thank you very much. I'm thanking him for that because I've also read some of his positive comments about what we are doing. He alluded to the fact that among the three issues he cited against Peter Obi, he mentioned ASU's encounter with that candidate. And that is very correct. That is very correct. I'll come back to that. Let me also acknowledge the presence of Professor Agbon. Agbon was the chairman of ASU at the University of Ibadan, and he did a great job while he was there before, where he went under brain drain and not necessarily the Jackpot syndrome, which is a more recent phenomenon. Prof, good to hear you, good to see you again after a long time. You used to be one of our leading voices in terms of the cost of petroleum products, how much it takes to produce a liter of fuel. It was a very reliable source, an authoritative one at that matter. It's a professor of petroleum engineering, if I'm still correct about that. So having him here today for me is quite, it's not tolerant of critical engagements. And I would say ASU, among other labor groups in the country, have been victimized. From our own reading of the situation, it appears that they always set out, the Nigerian ruling class sets out to emasculate critical voices. And my union has been a very big victim. So where I'm wondering really is, what I'm wondering about now is, what should we be doing differently? Because it appears that we have even enlightened, those will be regarded as enlightened voices, criticizing us each time we use our last weapon of resort, which is the strike action. And other groups in the country are also beginning to become docile, because it appears that people are saying, well, strike is not popular, and you should engage other means to prosecute your demands. Now, you have been there in the eye of the storm. What advice do you have for critical groups, those who think that either their sectors are not being given the deserved attention, or their engagements with government have been misconstrued over the years?
Thank you, Professor Ogunyemi.
Thank you very much.
I will take just a few more questions because the PA of Farotime has been calling me. I'm not picking the call, but I know why she's calling me, to put an end to this. So let me, please.
Can I take the questions that have been asked already?
You are the one who said you are tired, right? And
but I've been asked questions so that it doesn't just pile up.
Please go ahead.
I think the key thing that needs to be explained is that when I say I have no interest in governance, we must understand that not everybody will go into government offices. Every society has its need for the Farouks of this world. It requires its madmen like myself. It needs its iconoclasts like Rufai. It requires its intellectuals like Baba Falola, it will require these consciences like Bimbo herself. We have different roles to play. Not everybody on the football team would be strikers. Some of us would have to be defenders. In a democracy, you require your madmen, the ones who bring you or who calls you to your highest ideals. You won't always reach there. So let me enjoy that office. I like it. I like the fact that I greet you or answer you when I feel like. I'm not obliged to answer your greeting because I'm not a politician. I'm not a public officer. I don't have to be nice. I don't like being nice. So I like where I am. I enjoy the space I'm occupying. And I think other people, if you don't do it right, since you want to run government, we will tell you where you are going wrong. Every society needs its madmen. So let me enjoy my office. Now, the next thing are the questions asked by my sister Bimbo. Bimbo, I must thank you for the work you've been doing over the years. Baba Bisi Akonde is an old man. He's entitled to his senility. If Baba is talking about Americans funding NSAS, I don't know. Maybe USAID money went towards funding some people to carry flag at the toll gate. I don't know. But what I do know is that Nigerian youth who became tired of police brutality got together and the thing started organically. I also know that it wasn't American soldiers who shot and killed innocent, unharmed protesters at the toll gate. They were Nigerian soldiers. They shot, they killed, they injured. I, known to because of his work in Arise, I, with others, housed injured protesters, treated people with gunshot wounds, paid for people's burials. I know as a fact that Sanwo-Olu and the Lagos state government paid 100 million in cash in compensation, and yet some people will still be talking about America funding NSAS. Baba Akonde is entitled to his senility at his age, and he can go ahead and say whatever he cares. He also mentioned to us in the same interview that some people killed Ige. He has access to classified files as a friend of the president. He can share with us. There are many people who have been killed that we are wondering who killed them. We know Nigeria killed them in one way or the other. Since they are now talking about it, maybe they will tell us. Let him share with us. The second thing my sister asked was my role. Sorry, Baba. I have no interest in government office, but I'm interested in ensuring that in 2027 our votes count. You don't get that by waiting until 2027. You get that by demanding the requisite reforms now, and that's what I'm doing. So I don't know what I'll do in 2027, but I know that I'm interested in ensuring that our votes count in 2027.
Dr. Bolu Onabolu, please let me take 4 more questions and then we call it quit. Thank you, Dr. Bolu. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, okay. My name is Bolu Onabolu. Good day, Professor Falola. I'm calling in from Abuja. Thanks for putting this together. Mr. Rufai Oseni, you're doing a great job. Mr. Dele Farotimi, it's a pleasure to see you on this side. I'm one of the ordinary Nigerians that felt that call of duty to drop whatever I was doing to make sure that I was in court on that day in Ekiti. It was my first time in Ekiti. I see that many people, Nigeria happens to them. Quite a number of critics, since you were abducted, have also been abducted or whatever, or detained. But there hasn't been that rise by Nigerians to get up and speak. Even in Ekiti, I thought there would be more people. what, can you point out one or two things that you think made your case different, and how we can learn from that to actually strengthen the conscience of the citizen, not just to be keypad warriors? That's one thing. And then the second thing is that there are quite a number of people like me. We're ordinary women. I lead a group of women. We're ordinary women, but I find that oftentimes the politicians, the revolutionaries, you speak among yourselves, and you are not really, I had to make several calls trying to find, even how to get to Ekiti, how to get there. You are not milking. I don't want to use the word milking, but, I don't know how to say it, but there are many keypad warriors, but there are some people that their conscience has been triggered enough to want to actually be part of a movement. People say I'm part of obedient. I hate that word from the beginning, but what's the other word that goes with obi? But I hate the concept of obedient because I'm not obedient, but I know that I'm going to mention tribe because people seem to think that it's Igbos and maybe people who are not so. I'm a Yoruba woman, and I know that not too long ago, I sat with some Yoruba women, middle class, and we said, we don't know about Labour Party, but wherever Obi goes, we're going. Not because we see him as an angel, but we see him as someone who can listen. So I don't know if you got my questions. What was it about?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mwadi. Sir, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Adelefaro to me. My background, I'm calling from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, professor at Temple University. I teach law and psychology. The question I have for you, Dr. Dele, is some of us have been tenured, have worked here for a long time, want to come back home and practice law. The story you told about the judiciary in Nigeria is frightening. Would you advise us to come back to Nigeria or just stay put in this country?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Can I take those two before we take the other two?
I'm protecting you, but your PA.
No, it makes it easier for me to deal with it. You've already said I'm taking 4 questions. 2 have come already. Let me deal with them, and then I'll wait for the other 2. Quickly, all that made my case different was that you all forgot ethnicity. You forgot religion. To a very large extent, partisanship, political partisanship, was also relegated to the background. My humanity became the central point of engagement with my ordeal. So it became easy for a lot of people to see themselves vicariously in me. So they were able to identify with me as a human being, not as Delefaro to me, the loudmouth critic of government or the obedient or Yoruba man. I wasn't a Yoruba man. I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't an obedient. I was simply another victim of Nigeria. And that was what resonated with the others. The system could not pigeonhole me. You all responded because you saw yourselves in me. That's one. Second thing, you see, this echo chamber that we're all talking is inevitable. But I do recognize the fact that we've talked enough and we must have actionable plans for people to latch on to so that we might begin the journey to some sort of redemption. But the reality is, this echo chamber can only end when we have actions that we can step down, that people can then begin to move in the direction that has been pointed out. And I think we're getting there gradually. Some of that cannot be dealt with today. I'm not Dr. Dele, I'm just Dele Farotimi. All my scholarly pretensions disappeared after law school. I found that law school cured me of any intellectual pretensions. All I have, I managed to scrape my LLB BL. That's all. I'm not a doctor. I don't have that. So don't let me lay claim to what I don't have. Now, I cannot tell those of you who would build Nigeria to run away from it because of the many problems that it is facing. We have problems, but problems are meant to be solved. If I was born an American, I cannot bat a nation again. But we've been battered as Nigerians. As much as we might not like where we've been born, we have the opportunity to bat the place we desire. I prefer to be here, and I think you two should come. We have problems, undoubtedly, but we can solve those problems. They are not insurmountable. It is what my sister, Dr. Onobolu, just pointed out. We continue speaking in this echo chamber without actionable plans, and then our situation seems hopeless. It is not hopeless.
Thank you, Dele. Professor Godwin Sogolo, University of Ibadan. Professor Godwin Sogolo, University of Ibadan. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. I first of all, I want to say that I always love listening to our two speakers, and I'm happy that I've enjoyed this evening, just the way I used to enjoy our socialists of the 1960s, 70s, and so forth, who have now, as it were, vanished. There's a kind of truth, I don't know whether to call it political truth, that your oppressors, particularly politicians, are not people you persuade to give way. In other words, for you to change society, you must go beyond just talking. I agree, like Dele said, that that democracy needs mad people, but the madness must go beyond talking. It is good what we are saying. I would not wish that any of you should get yourself into trouble, be locked up, or anything, or be beaten, and so forth. No. The question is this. This Dele said that we must make sure in this country that votes count. My question to him is this. We are talking already about 2027. Now, if you truly are committed to doing something to change the Nigerian society, what are your plans for votes to count in 2027? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay. And before you leave, I have a question for you. You've been part of the Nigerian education system for almost half a century. You've seen the best of it. And in the last 3 weeks, they've created 3 new universities. What do you think about that, sir?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm having some...
but we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry, I was distracted. I didn't quite get the question. Can you just...
So in the last 3 weeks, they've created 3 new universities.
Yes. What is... Okay.
What Yaba has been converted to university. They've created NOC University, and they've created Ugoni University. All in the last 3 weeks. What do you think about this?
Yeah, my answer to you, Prof, is that I'm really not in an area where I can have control over the creation of new universities. But I believe that rather than to put the issues in the education sector on the number of universities or the number of programs or disciplines, it should be on
whether or not the existing universities are being properly run. That is a much more critical issue. It is true when you make a comparison, which I've done, of the number of universities and the population all over the world, and you compare those ones with Nigeria, you find that Nigeria still needs more universities. Even with the 272, also, that's the last count I had, universities that this country has. If you compare that and you relate that to the population of this country, you might agree that we need more universities in order to solve the problem of access. That is very, very important. I don't want to, this is not an issue of university discussion, so I don't want to go too much into.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to ask you questions about philosophy. That would take more time. The last.
Oh, I'm ready.
Let's take the last one. Temitope Fagua, a member of the left.
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank our comrade Delefaro Timi for the interesting conversation, and also to thank Prof for bringing us all here again. I just wanted to point out, comrade Delefaro Timi, that more often than not, I think one of the things that we need to emphasize is the question of economics, is the question of the economic alternative, the economic systems that we think can genuinely transform the social conditions of the mass of our people. And I think more often than not, we don't also see that from you. And I think that there is a need. I mean, we cannot talk about how we are going to get rid of all of this backward system that confront our people without not manipulating that. No, that's which I think not necessarily emphasize them. And I think that also has to do with why our understanding of global politics has to be rooted in an economic alternative. By the way, we cannot normalize the exploitation, of the vast resources of our homeland by America, by putting up with the position that it is normal. There's nothing normal about the fact that Congo is what it is now, consequent to the fact that you have multinational corporations, belonging to the government of that country, belonging to the Western imperialist agencies. I think there is a necessity for us to come up with that necessary alternative by saying that any form of exploitation or oppression, on the continent and beyond the continent is not normal.
Thank you, Temitope. Temitope has a very good initiative. Maybe Delefaro Timi can also create it, in which he established opposite of Anchor University a small place where he combines giving lectures with some relaxation. And I was there to address them one time. Great questions, great MC. It's like the idea of a cafe with intellectual power. Yeah. Akpabio, finally, Akpabio, please do not indicate you want to talk. We've run out of time. Akpabio.
Thank you so much for still giving me the opportunity. I want to be quick. I really appreciate seeing Delefaro Timi. He's still he's still bold and he's still in shape. Though Nigeria happened to him, I think he has fully recovered. But I want to ask about what's your thoughts on the continued detention and trial of Nnamdi Kanu. He's being held by the same system that held and released you, but his own seems to be endless. We saw what was trending within the week, where he said he can no longer continue.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We had a question.
So, what's your thought?
Thank you.
You see,
hold on. Because I want you to answer and make your closing statements. The professor from OAU, Adekoya, Obafemi Awolowo University, professor of literature, Okay, if you have disappeared, please, can Rufai make his closing statements?
Yes, sir.
Please, can you make your closing statements?
Yes, sir. Couple of things. It's been a very thought-provoking conversation here, and I really thank you, sir, for giving us the chance. And thanks to other people on the panel, Dr. Barogi and my brother David Farratini. Thank you guys so much. But a couple of things I'd like to happen as I close. Number one, I do not take the concept, and I think it was muted today, that this is the best we can do in a decolonized society. I don't think this is the best we can do. I think Nigerians have really exalted mediocrity, and I think that's the problem, you know. And I call it the concept of promoted on trial. It's probably in Nigeria you will hear that somebody was promoted on trial. What are you? He failed. He couldn't advance to the next class. What are you saying promoted on trial? He failed, he failed. He passed, he passed. But when we start to talk this promoted on trial mentality, like our politicians do, that make us bring the worst of us to lead the best of us, we can never succeed. I mean, we all know that most of the political class ruling us today, they are total bunkum. This, I mean, I have had the privilege of having private conversations. These are people that cannot even, Prof, this gathering we are, they can't, if you say contribute in such a gathering, they can't even say one thing. And those are the people leading us. And we say this is the best Nigerian can do. I don't believe this is the best Nigerian can do. And except we start to fight that mentality of mediocrity by saying that we can actually take the fight to these people. The only thing they have more than you is the violence and all of that. But we also have the cerebral capacity to take them on the issues. Except we start to do that, Nigeria will not get to the point it can get to. I mean, a good example is the budget. Look at how funny the appropriation of the budget has been. $36 billion. Look at the inanities they share the budget on. In the end, the budget will not achieve performance because people are not telling themselves the truth. And those that you are putting to administer, they will circumvent a larger position of the budget, over 50-60% of the budget, so people don't get anything. We know that if you put right people in there, that budget can actually perform properly. But some people are just neck deep in this thieving mentality to be able to destroy everything. So, except we start to demand better. Because, I mean, running Nigeria is not rocket science. It's not a hard task. Every nation has its own peculiarities and all of that. Nigerians are even highly impressionable people. Once they see somebody comes and they see the genuineness of purpose, they start to fall in line. It's just that we've set this pedestal of mediocrity, and that's why we'll never move forward. Nigeria will only rise if we demand better. And the better should start from all of us ourselves. It's not a hard task to fix Nigeria. If we get it right, we can be a superpower in the next 10, 15 years. It is possible. We've seen nations become superpower in our lifetime. And these nations were colonized. China, for a large part, there was a British occupation in China, but they got their acts right together. They joined the WTO in 2001. And we saw what it becomes. So let's stop this deceit. We pamper ourselves with mediocrity. That's our problem.
Thank you very much. Well, our future program, we are talking about AI and Africa. We are bringing the president of the African Development Bank. His term ends in May, and he wants to run to become Nigeria's president.
He has denied that, sir.
He's denied that? I said denied that?
He said he was misunderstood. He didn't mean that.
Okay. We'll be talking about two academic topics, Afrofuturism, and then we have a writer, Nady, who just released a book with a $1 million contract. What does that mean? I'll be talking about slavery and racism in the context of Trump. And we've assembled distinguished teams to talk about all this. Professor Kwerogi, your closing statements?
Well, I don't know. The Nigerian state, as several people have already pointed out, is functioning exactly the way it was designed to function. This is a colonial extractive state that was not structured to be developmental. But to give into that and stop is to give into what I call the disempowering tyranny of disabling cynicism. So the fact that we inherited a state that was not intended to function, that was not intended to move us forward, is no reason to give in to cynicism and to not attempt to rework the system. And that's why I think the work that people like Dele Farotimi and others do is very fundamental. We need to come to a consensus that the society we inherited from the British is not working, hasn't worked since we so-called have gotten our independence. And we need to go beyond this conversation to actually engaging in a process of creative destruction to refashion a nation that works in our interest. And when you say the term creative destruction, it may sound very threatening. People think of the destruction, they don't talk about the creativity that comes in the destruction. Because there can be destruction, there's no creative. There are many examples of nations that were colonized, and Rufai Oseni has just talked about China. Nigeria is not the most complex country in the world. India has more people than the entire African continent combined. It has more diversity than we could ever imagine. They have Christianity, they have Islam, they have Hinduism, they have Buddhism, and their ethnic plurality is way more complex, more labyrinthine than ours. They have over 850 languages, mutually unintelligible languages. We have just 500. But somehow, in spite of the struggles, they managed to progress. They managed to move forward every inch, and we can do that as well. So I hope that conversations like this and the activism of people like Dele Farotimi and others will move us in the direction of initiating a creative destruction of this structure that was not intended to function and which is living up to its expectation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank our partners. We have been oversubscribed. Activists joined in over 21 countries. We even ran out of streaming rights. We are very grateful to you all. We're going to release the transcript of this entire conversation 2 minutes after it's over. Before you go to the bathroom, the transcript is being released to the world. Journalists have joined us. I do not know what they are going to say. And usually I do my own analysis, analyzing how I understood what you have said in 2 or 3 media pieces. I know that DL is tired. He was trying to contact me. I didn't pick the phone. And he told me that his capacity is limited when it comes to events like this. He spent, did you spend 3 hours now?
August.
You spent 3 hours. You see? See, we can go for another 1 hour you want.
I am
Okay, so suppose I want to write your obituary. What do you think I should say?
He lived by his conscience.
Lived by his conscience. On that very note, do you want to talk or should I let you go?
Just one last thing and then I'll say bye-bye.
Okay.
And I will take my word from the Holy Quran to be specific, chapter 23, verse 71. And it says, and I quote, "And if the truth follows their desires, the heaven and the heart, and all those who are therein would perish." Now, systems runs on certainty, and even God himself built the world on certainties. The abiding character of societies that have progressed has been the certainties of their systems and their laws. In the absence of certainties, chaos ensues. And that is exactly what the Quran referenced here. It says, if the truth follows their desires, it means that if you follow the impunity by which our country is governed, because it is the desires of men that governs Nigeria, not fixed laws, perversion, putrefaction, chaos, such as the one that we live with, overtakes the place. I commend to Nigerians the centrality of law is rule in our society. In the absence of the governance of the country by the rule of law, the perversion that has overtaken us would continue, regardless of what any one of us might do. So, I ask us, let us all learn to stop subjectivizing the truth and to just insist that the law must rule all of us equally. That is only when you might have citizenship. That's to answer my brother who spoke to the subject of citizenship as I've raised. You cannot have citizens in a place not ruled by law. You have subjects at best, victims at worst, which is what Nigerians have become. Thank you very much for the privilege.
Thank you. This is not just an intellectual exercise, and you can see the heavy weight of scholars who have joined from different countries and different institutions. It's about policy goals and improving our country. Hopefully, some of these ideas will spread. To those of you who still want to talk, like Jamila Nashiru, I apologize. Our time is up. What do we do next? We are going to play music. And if you like the music we have played, send us an email and we'll release to the panelists our music playlist for this occasion, which are revolutionary songs. And we also release to the panelists the brief that we provided, because we always open 1 hour before and we'll release all those. So you'll be getting from us the transcript of this entire conversation, the music we played for the event, and the bios of Dele Farotimi that we've presented. Music, please. And